Chapter 553. Aren't you going in to take a look? Crane looked at Tang Tian. Out of all of them, he was the first to regain his senses and started to think about some practical problems. Bing floated out from Tang Tian's body. If you are not a saint, you will not be able to pass through this void. The four of them did not fly. It was a border planet, and those who could fly were absolute experts. They sat in an extremely unremarkable carriage flying at a low altitude. This is... Everyone nodded their heads. Tang Tian was right. They were all walking the path of the zero-energy body, and the spirit domains they cultivated were completely different from ordinary saints. Crane and Jing Hao revealed the same expression. They were also confused. After flying for 6 days, the four of them were slightly tired. They all took out star rocks and replenished their energy. Their method of replenishing energy was extremely unique. As long as they broke the star rocks, the drifting energy would be absorbed into their eyebrows and directly enter the spirit domain. Jing Hao nodded his head. We are walking on a brand new path and everything needs to be explored. The sages of the past painstakingly explored it, and now it is our turn. The rest of them seemed to have awoken from a dream. Sexton's eye in the distance was only a small light. The four of them immediately activated their bodies and flew towards Sexton's eye. The four of them were extremely fast and quickly caught up to Sexton's eye. They turned around to look behind them at the place they had just passed through. A star door was floating in the void. Tang Tian immediately raised his hand. Of course it is called Tang Domain. Tang Tian suddenly had a thought. What if we add a spirit technique to our spirit domain to purify and temper true power? Crane laughed bitterly. I don't think so. Roughly 20 minutes later, Sexton's eye suddenly flew out of the water, and Tang Tian and the rest immediately leapt out of the water. The surroundings were pitch black, but to Tang Tian and the rest, it was as bright as day. What surprised everyone was that Ursa Major constellation did not form an alliance with Leo constellation, which made the Honorable Martial Alliance heave a sigh of relief. The original plan of the Honorable Martial Alliance to conquer Ursa Major constellation was immediately shelved and switched to attacking Leo constellation. It was already extremely strenuous for the Honorable Martial Alliance to fight against 2 Ecliptic Palace-grade constellations, and to fight against 3 Ecliptic Palace-grade constellations at the same time. That was simply foolish. Entering the valley, the Sexton's eye in Tang Tian's hand suddenly lit up. In the void there was very little energy and there was no air. Moreover, without the flight technique it would be difficult to move an inch. Jing Hao laughed. I think since we are trained with zero-energy bodies, let's call it zero domain. Tang Tian said nonchalantly, then we'll make one. Tang Tian suddenly said, actually this place is very suitable for us zero-energy bodies. Tang Tian was mercilessly suppressed, and Jing Hao's suggestion was unanimously approved by everyone. Even saints do not have it easy. Jing Hao said, the energy here is so thin the saints' true power consumption will be huge. And they also need to prevent the true power from flowing out. The valley was much larger than they had expected. What a show-off. Ling Su snorted, his face filled with disdain. Around them was an endless void, a vast sea of rocks appearing right in front of them. Every stone was of different shapes and sizes. They were densely packed as they floated in the air. It suddenly struggled free from Tang Tian's hand. The Sexton's eye suddenly lit up and dimmed. Suddenly it quickly spun, flying deep into the valley. The four of them were roused and followed closely behind. Although the Sexton's eye was extremely fast, but to the four of them it was nothing. The trees here were all extremely tall. The sunlight was unable to penetrate through the dense and thick canopy, and the air was filled with the smell of rotting leaves. But there were many spies here, and all the big powerhouses were extremely curious about Tang Tian's background. Everyone became excited. It should be an underground karst cave. The Sexton's eye's light aura flickered. It flew forward again, making many turns. After about 10 li, the sound of rushing water came out. The river water flowed out from the rocks. The water flow was extremely rapid. Obviously there was an underground river. When Libra constellation and Ursa Major constellation announced at the same time that both parties were researching on the newest mechanical spirit weapons, the entire heavens road was shaken once again. The alliance between the two magnates officially announced that Ursa Major constellation had stepped into the ranks of the top tyrants. Compared to saints who needed to use their meridians to absorb energy, it was much more convenient and effective. But Tang Tian's body no longer had any energy. and the energy was directly stored in the spirit domain. Before them, no one had ever used the spirit domain to store energy, because the energy would corrode the spirit domain. But after Tang Tian and the rest's martial spirits had transformed into energy, they were like Tang Tian and the rest's bodies. They were not corroded by the energy, but instead became the best vessel to store energy. Although Wu'an Star was already under the control of Ursa Major constellation, they were extremely proud of Tang Tian, the local martial artist. And it was the hometown of the Bear King, so there were many martial artists from Ursa Major constellation. Tang Tian's mother's grave had specialized martial artists guarding it. Our energy consumption is very small. All of you are enlightened on laws. I have a feeling that the void is very suitable for our battlefield. Tang Tian said. Ling Su, since you said that, I will consider it as you automatically forfeiting. Tang Tian said happily. The four of them were startled and immediately rushed towards the stone wall without hesitation. There was no feeling of obstruction, as though they were passing through the air. The four of them only felt their vision blurring, and were immediately stunned by the scene in front of them. Tang Tian and the rest could feel that they were continuously descending. Just as Heaven's Road was digesting the alliance, Tang Tian and the rest had already disappeared. Crane saw that the two of them were about to fight again, and immediately asked, "Then what name should we give it? I feel that the road we are walking on now, is it the end of the Heaven Ascension Stairs, the so-called Upper Dantian?" Crane spoke out the question that he had been thinking about for a long time. In the past when we trained, the Dantian would form step by step, and the final destination would be the Upper Dantian between the eyebrows. Since ancient times, everyone had guessed what was at the end of Heaven's Road, and everyone had placed their focus on the other end of Heaven's Road. Little Fool also floated out. His face was filled with shock. Such a vast and majestic world was presented in front of them, and humans would always lament how small they were, like dust. The sexton's eye in his hand was as agile as a fish. Following closely behind the sexton's eye, the four of them swam along the underground river, and very quickly their vision darkened. The underground river once again entered the ground. Very quickly the four of them regained their spirit. The vast sea of rocks caused everyone's expression to congeal. They had never seen such a place before, and no one knew if there were any dangers inside. "There's such a spirit technique?" Ling Su could not help but ask. Crane suddenly became extremely excited. "I know. The place that we just passed is the end of Heaven's Road. Wu'an Star is already the edge of the horizon." Crane raised his eyebrow. "I am a salty person." Just at that moment, the sexton's eye suddenly shot into the stone wall and disappeared. "What? Are we going to fight?" Ling Su stared at him. Tang Tian shook his head. "Not going to watch. If we win, it won't be too late to watch then." Tang Tian was the first to react. "Chase after the sexton's eye." The sexton's eye dove into the water. The four of them did not hesitate and dove into the water at the same time. The body's meridians and dantian's capacity was limited, but the spirit domain's capacity was much larger. Ling Su said straightforwardly, "Let's fight first." Tang Tian never thought that the sexton's eye's coordinates would actually be Wu'an Star. There were too many familiar people in Starwind City. If they were to be recognized, then it would be a huge problem. For ordinary saints, the spirit domain was in charge of controlling energy, and the energy stored was still in the body. That's right, that's right. Tang Tian nodded his head and said excitedly, "Since our spirit domain is a brand new spirit domain, then should we give it a new name? Mine is also 5 to 6 times stronger than before." Crane said, "But the energy inside is not as pure as true power, since it has not been purified and tempered through the meridians." The carriage's speed was not fast, and after flying for 3 days and 3 nights under the guidance of the sexton's eye, they arrived at an extremely desolate valley. There was nothing special about the valley, and was no different from any other valley, with dense vegetation and overgrown vines. One look and one could tell that no one had been here for a long time. "This scene is truly spectacular." Jing Hao could not help but exclaim. In the void, the concept of time and space would often become very blurry. Sexton's eye dove into the sea of rocks. The four of them followed closely behind, and without hesitation they flew into the sea of rocks. Flying closer, the vastness of the sea of rocks was even more shocking. The current Starwind City was extremely prosperous. Especially Caramel Academy, it had become the most famous academy in the nearby planets. The standards of the teachers were obviously much higher than the other academies, and the surrounding students were attracted by its reputation. The others were startled. The four of them were dumbstruck. The big rocks were like mountains, while the small rocks were only the size of mung beans. They quietly floated in the void like a gigantic barrier blocking their path. "That's right, this is disadvantageous to us," Crane said solemnly. "There are so many saints in the sacred saint galaxy, this void to them is not a problem at all. And we don't have that many saints." "That's right." Ling Su, who had been quiet the entire time, frowned. "The energy is not pure enough, it is slightly awkward to use, the power is much weaker, and it is more difficult to control. For your father to actually be able to find this place, he is truly too powerful." Ling Su was in awe, he was already completely confused. Jing Hao's eyes lit up. This is an interesting idea. They felt that the sea of rocks was right in front of them, but they did not expect that after flying for 6 days, they would only reach the edge of the sea of rocks. There was no air in the void, so there was no resistance when they flew, and their speed became extremely fast, so fast that they did not even dare to imagine it in the past. After flying for 6 days, the distance was unimaginable. Crane's words are reasonable. Jing Hao nodded his head, but no one has ever successfully trained in the heaven stairs before. In theory, I feel that it is very close. The capacity of the spirit domain is much bigger than the meridians and Dantian pools. It is equivalent to an inner space. The energy in my sword spirit is 5 times more than before. The other two were also attracted by Tang Tian's idea. Crane's eyes lit up. Although it will take up spirit value, but to be able to obtain pure energy like true power, it is still worth it. "Everyone be careful," Jing Hao said solemnly. The spirit techniques of the spirit domain were used to control energy. If the energy was not pure enough, the difficulty of controlling it would be very high, and it would also affect the power of the spirit technique. Chapter 554. I have them here too, but they are not metal particles but some black sand. Tang Tian's fists were like the wind, his fists were enveloped in the red devil flame. The devil flame that William left behind was never used by Little Fool, and was left in Tang Tian's body, becoming Tang Tian's best weapon. The others were visibly moved when they heard this. To Little Fool, who was a picky perfectionist with obsessive-compulsive disorder, to leave behind an object that was only a memento and had no practical value, was something that was hard to accept. One big and one small spirit domain gave birth to countless transformations. The sturdy rocks in front of the black figures were like tofu, easily pierced through, leaving behind a thumb-sized hole. Tang Tian and the rest's faces changed. They then understood where the densely packed holes on the rocks came from. The formless undulation was able to disturb the state of mind. Crane had tried it before. It was completely different from other illusion-type spirit techniques, as it directly affected the state of mind, and was even harder to defend against. Tang Tian might as well create a layer of fire screen around his body. It was as though the weird postures were filled with a power that caused people's hearts to palpitate. Before he finished speaking, a jet black figure suddenly shot out from the densely packed black figures, pouncing towards them like rain. The only strange thing was, none of the black worms pounced towards Little Fool. A pearl on top of Little Fool's head slowly rotated, releasing a light screen that enveloped Little Fool. The inheritance of the sect originated from the Far East, and after the death of the ancestor, no one was able to truly explain the profoundness behind it. When the black figures entered the silver aura, they exploded into pieces. The vast and boundless sea of rocks was not safe at all. "Look at that rock!" Crane exclaimed, attracting everyone's attention. "Be careful, there's something weird." Tang Tian's intuition was the sharpest. As though something was spying on them, he immediately warned them. These black worms were slightly longer than fingers. Their entire bodies were black and shiny with a metallic luster. Their bodies were segmented and could bend at will. And when these segmented bodies bent, it was like a spring being bent, filled with astonishing power. The moment they came into contact with the rock, their bodies would bend, and like a spring they would pull on the rock. Using this force, their bodies would shoot out, leaving a finger-thick but extremely deep hole in the rock. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, this kind of mysterious and primitive dance had shocking power. At that time he then understood the Crane sect had many techniques like the Crane dance, which he had long seen through. So Little Fool spent a lot of effort to refine Yaya's umbrella. The simple and unadorned sword move pierced the black worm. The black worm's incomparably hard body was split into two from the middle. The cut surface was extremely smooth. Jing Hao methodically sliced open the black worms with his sword again and again. His actions were extremely fast. As long as the devil flame touched the black insects, it would be like maggots on bones, burning the black insects' bodies continuously, until the black insects' bodies were completely burned. Pu. Soon this swarm of black insects was completely wiped out. The powerful qi of the forceful subjugating bead, even the black insects that did not have any intelligence and only knew how to kill, did not dare to come close. The four of them stopped. The victory did not make them happy at all. On the contrary, everyone's faces were gloomy. The black insects were not weak. They had just entered the sea of rocks and had already met them, causing everyone's heart to be shrouded in a layer of haze. Little Fool's reaction was the fastest. Yaya's umbrella suddenly blocked in front of the four of them. A faint light aura lit up from the umbrella, transforming into a light barrier. Yaya's umbrella had long been destroyed in the battle with the temple saints, and with Yaya's current spirit value, Yaya's umbrella was no longer useful. If it was the past Little Fool, he would have long thrown this pile of trash away, but Yaya had saved him, so he reluctantly kept it. The black shadows were like raindrops being thrown away by the umbrella, entering the surrounding rocks. Immediately a series of piu sounds that could not be heard came out incessantly. But Tang Tian and the rest were all battle-hardened. After the initial shock, they quickly regained their senses. The first to counterattack was Ling Su. He gently rubbed his palms, releasing countless silver auras in the air. The crane sword in Crane's hand was unsheathed, releasing a clear crane cry, causing everyone's spirit to be roused. In the blink of an eye, countless of insect corpses that were sliced into two floated around him. Little Fool took a deep breath and suddenly rotated the umbrella handle. Different from Crane's ethereal and mysterious sword, Jing Hao's sword, every move and form, was as clear as a ruler. His sword techniques were obviously not fast, neither slow nor fast, but the black shadows that were as fast as lightning were unable to struggle free from his sword images. Of course, to the current Crane, those were still too profound. The ethereal figures that appeared in front of him from time to time caused him to be deeply attracted to them. Around Tang Tian floated many rice-sized black metal grains. Tang Tian picked up a black gold grain, his face full of surprise. So hard, I thought the devil flame would be able to melt it. Never did I expect it to not melt. Everyone then saw clearly all the black shadows were actually black insects. Crane's sex sword techniques were not for competition, but for sacrificial weapons. Such enlightenment made Crane not know whether to laugh or to cry. And he could not learn other spirit techniques and could only comprehend them himself. The three of them became even more vigilant. They had considerable trust in Tang Tian's intuition. Although crazy Tang Tian was usually unreliable, but on the battlefield Tang Tian's judgment was rarely wrong. Even the slightly arrogant Little Fool became careful. Towards the fool's beast-like intuition, he had experienced it deeply. There was still a long way to go and no one knew what kind of dangers they would encounter. Suddenly Tang Tian exclaimed, attracting everyone's attention. If we were to say that Jing Hao's spirit domain was an extremely rare sword spirit, then Sun Mo Crane's spirit domain was even more mysterious and unfathomable. Even Crane himself did not expect that after training according to the heavenly crane sword principle, what he was training was not sword techniques, but a type of sacrificial ceremony. But this kind of power only made him more excited. Drunk on saint blood in his hands, was tamed and docile. The brilliance was reserved, without a bit of bloodthirsty aura. As far as the eye could see, it was all rocks, dead silence. The current Crane was in a daze like an illusion. His dancing figure was like smoke, blurry and indistinct. The concentrated and crisp sounds of impact came out from the umbrella. At the same time, an astonishing power came out. Little Fool's face changed. Tang Tian's words immediately reminded Crane. Crane carefully looked around, his eyes lit up. All the black insects that he thought were destroyed by the wind, left behind many fine black sand. If not for Tang Tian's reminder, he would not have noticed the black sand. Pa. He did not only have one spirit domain but two. One was the spirit domain in between his eyebrows and the other was the crane sword in his hand. In the past he always thought that the crane sword was the saint treasure of the heavenly crane constellation, but now he understood, it was a weapon brought by his ancestor from the east, and his ancestor used his supreme power to make the heavenly crane constellation belong to the sword. Tang Tian was still far from truly gaining enlightenment on the devil flame, but he could already control it to a certain degree. Be careful. Tang Tian's face suddenly changed. He had never seen such a black insect crane in any ancient records. The front of its pincer-like mouth was like two extremely sharp blades. And what made people afraid was that the two blades could vibrate at an extremely high frequency. The hard rocks in front of such sharp weapons were as soft as tofu. Ding ding ding. The black insects did not have high intelligence. Upon being swept by the formless ripples, their bodies immediately became stiff and they lost control. Fighting head-on was his favorite way of fighting. Without hesitation, his body moved along with his spear, and another silver aura exploded in front of him, enveloping the incoming black figure. Only then did he deeply understand, the crane sect's inheritance was vast and profound, it was not ordinary. Even though he was a saint, he originally thought that with his understanding of energy, his understanding of laws, he should be able to understand the absolute techniques of the sect. But what he did not expect was, he realized that there were still many things that he did not understand. Hearing Crane's words, Jing Hao and Ling Su looked at each other. Without saying a word, they collected all the floating insect corpses. Although they did not understand the use of the black gold, but it was obvious. The black figures that were scattered all around, once again pounced towards Tang Tian and the rest from all directions. It was definitely a good thing. Flying into the sea of rocks, everyone was extremely careful. Tang Tian controlled Sexton's eye, not allowing it to fly too fast. The new Yaya umbrella focused on its defensive capabilities, and Little Fool did not care about the cost. Adding the Honorable Martial Cauldron, the new Yaya umbrella's defensive capabilities were extremely outstanding. Tang Tian spent a lot of time to comprehend William's imprints. All of them were fragments of laws. They did not have any energy, they were just pure fragments. From a certain perspective, the devil flame left behind by Tang Tian was no longer a complete devil flame, it was missing a portion of energy. Tang Tian's devil flame was extremely powerful. Although Tang Tian did not understand what kind of flame it was, but it was definitely a type of law flame. Any type of law flame's power was much stronger than ordinary flames, something that even law flames could not burn. Fast as lightning. Everyone's gaze followed Crane's direction and landed on an unremarkable rock. The rock was densely packed like a beehive of holes, causing everyone's hair to stand. The black figures were extremely fast, to the point that it was hard for the naked eye to catch them. The black insects were like flying insects flying into the fire, pouncing into the screen of fire. Yaya umbrella retreated step by step. The powerful force caused sparks to fly out, lighting up the dark void. Forceful subjugating bead. But William did not expect that his devil flame, after removing the portion of energy, would actually become even more powerful. It had become a unique and different type of law flame. Ling Su was excited. The power of the black figures was much stronger than what he had imagined. His body was pushed back by the powerful force. The crane's sword in Crane's hand brushed past like the wind. The umbrella's surface quickly spun. The intense rotation immediately caused the power attacking the umbrella's surface to bounce out. The black insects were like wind, quickly collapsing and disintegrating. The concentrated sound of explosions came out from his silver rain like spear auras. This type of black insect, I have never seen any records of it before. Crane grabbed one of the insect corpses, placed it in front of his eyes and carefully inspected it. The black insect's outer shell was extremely tough. Even with Crane's strength, he was actually unable to break the metallic outer shell. It originated from the dance of the Eastern shamans. Whoosh. His body moved like a black crane dancing. The long sword danced in the air, displaying a strange posture. A formless ripple with Crane as the center, suddenly dispersed out. All of the black figures that were swept by the formless ripple became sluggish. Chapter 555. The stone on Yaya's forehead suddenly lit up with a faint light aura. The black stone started to melt like ice, and Yaya's bulging stomach quickly disappeared. Tang Tian, who was initially overjoyed, immediately felt guilty. It can't be. The calm and peaceful white honorable martial light flame enveloped the black stone, and gradually the black stone started to shrink. 2 hours later it became the size of a fist. Yaya, who was waiting for praise, suddenly felt his body tighten, and was grabbed by Tang Tian. Tang Tian shouted with all his might from behind. This fellow. Everyone was startled, but all of their faces were filled with joy. Tang Tian had let Little Fool try, but the honorable martial cauldron was unable to burn the strange black gold. Ling Su's face was filled with excitement, his spear pointed straight at the sea of rocks in front of him. He had long forgotten about the danger he was in. To the null domain, the increase in spirit value meant that the amount of energy it could hold would also increase. They had sparred with Tang Tian many times and were extremely clear of Tang Tian's strength, but that fist gave them a completely different feeling. The one with the most complicated expression was Little Fool. In his eyes, the blood on Tang Tian's body was filled with astonishing power and was boiling like lava. Inside the Gemini furnace, the sea of energy was completely suppressed by the sea of blood. The vast sea of blood released a terrifying power, and the sea of energy was suppressed to a corner. Everyone was startled by this sudden turn of events. This sea of rocks was filled with all kinds of unpredictable dangers. The continuous changes had already reminded them even though they were saints in the vast world they still had to be extremely careful. Tang Tian was shocked. I won't evolve into a worm, right? Little Fool lied with his eyes wide open, his face full of confidence. Definitely not. Tang Tian had a handful of black gold grains in his hand. Every grain was the size of a rice grain. The black worm corpse that was slightly longer than a finger, after going through the devil flame, would only leave behind such a small black gold grain. Tang Tian was a little stunned. Before he could react, the black gold grains in his palm melted like ice and seeped into his skin. The black gold liquid quickly seeped into his blood vessels and mixed with his blood. Following his blood vessels, it entered the blood furnace. Tang Tian stared blankly at his own palm. He could clearly feel the surging power contained in his body. This was pure physical strength. His flesh and blood had now become tougher than steel, and it seemed as if they could converge into a torrent at any time. Go go go. Tang Tian muttered to himself in disbelief. Crane and the rest knew that it was not an illusion, but something had happened to Tang Tian's body. Places with rich energy were easy to breed soul origins, but these soul origins were extremely thin, just strands of them. They had never felt such a rich and pure soul essence. Soon, with the four of them working together, they spent an entire hour peeling off the rock bit by bit, revealing the inner core. Boom. Tang Tian had a weird expression. The blood furnace seems to be absorbing it. Just at that moment, Tang Tian suddenly felt the blood furnace heat up. Following that, boiling hot blood spewed out from the blood furnace and entered his blood vessels, flowing along his body. Wherever it passed, Tang Tian would feel a numb and itchy feeling as though new skin was growing. Let's give it a try, Jing Hao said cautiously. But the next scene made Tang Tian's words stop at the tip of his tongue. Ours. They are all ours. Whoever dares to snatch from us, we will stab him to death. As expected, you have evolved. Crane floated over and asked curiously, I wonder if you will grow wings or a tail when the time comes. A man cannot be corrupted by riches and cannot be subdued by force. But in front of so many people it was too embarrassing. Tang Tian used strength to pinch it and said, it is still elastic, but it seems to be harder than before. Could there be something inside? The few of them looked at each other without saying a word. They started to take action. Everyone was dumbstruck. Everyone was stunned. Before everyone took action, he immediately shouted, leave some seeds for the Blood Meridian's laboratory. My body seems to have become stronger. Rocks the size of 5 to 6 stories suddenly shattered into pieces. A deep light aura pierced through the rain of rocks. It was actually Yaya. Just at that moment, Yaya came over, its face drooling. Little Fool glanced at it and passed it over. You want it? Tang Tian's portion naturally fell into Little Fool's mouth. After eating his fill, Little Fool was satisfied. His spirit value increased by 10 points. But his gaze landed on the black stone ball. The insect eggs on the black stone ball had already been destroyed by everyone. Spirit origin. A small explosion sounded out in his heart. This made everyone beam with joy. If there were no saint bones or other supplements, wanting to raise spirit value was extremely difficult. Even in a place with dense energy, the spirit origin's growth speed was extremely slow. Little Fool did not like the intense and thick smell of blood at all. Tang Tian's fist just now did not use the devil flame, it was purely physical strength. Before he finished speaking, Tang Tian suddenly threw out Yaya and shouted, Flesh bullet attack. Tang Tian suddenly shouted and punched the rock. Flesh bullet attack. Just at that moment, the blood furnace in Tang Tian's body suddenly jumped intensely, indistinctly. It was filled with an indescribable desire. Yaya's body started to emit a layer of metallic luster. As expected of a treasure land. Crane licked his lips. Heaven has given us such a good opportunity. If we do not take it, then we will be struck by lightning. Seems like this sea of rocks is a good place. There are treasures everywhere. It can increase spirit value. It can also let the body evolve. This is a treasure land. Even the reserved and calm Jing Hao could not remain calm at that moment. But following that, an extremely ferocious qi suddenly burst out from Tang Tian's body. This burst of qi was extremely sudden and disappeared extremely quickly as well. In a breath of time, the red Tang Tian recovered back to normal and the terrifying qi disappeared without a trace, as though the scene just now was just an illusion. The three of them roared in unison and rushed into the sea of rocks. Upon making a move, they sensed that something was amiss. The ordinary-looking rock was far more sturdy than they had imagined. Tang Tian's fist smashed down, only leaving a shallow pit. This caused everyone to be roused. It seemed like there was something good inside. He felt his blood, flesh and bones, continuously releasing small explosive sounds, incessantly ringing in his ears. A small warm flow continuously exploded from every part of his body. In that moment, Tang Tian's entire body was like a cooked prawn. Hey, wait for me. Such a weird technique, the enemy would definitely not be able to predict it. The pure energy undulation was the undulation of the spirit origin. A crisp sound came out, everyone changed again only to see that the small mountain-sized rock was instantly covered with spider web-like cracks. Suddenly, countless of fine rocks shot out in all directions like rain. Crane and Ling Su's eyes lit up with a faint green light aura at the same time. The light aura on Yaya's body gradually dimmed, but the metallic luster on its body became even deeper. Yaya cheered. Suddenly his legs kicked like a cannonball. He struck a piece of rock. Tang Tian then heaved a sigh of relief. It was a black ball the size of a bamboo basket. Its surface was covered with densely packed light spots. The light spots were flickering. Looking carefully, everyone could see clearly. These light spots were the eggs of the black worms. They were releasing an indescribable undulation. Pa. Are you all right? Crane looked at Tang Tian worriedly. Tang Tian did not say a word and came to the front of a rock the size of a small mountain. It was the biggest rock they could see, and in front of the rock Tang Tian's body was extremely small. His heart moved. He suddenly took out the honorable martial cauldron. Using the forceful subjugating bead, he started to refine the bamboo basket-sized black rock. Little Fool then floated over slowly. The blood furnace's mission is to help your body evolve. I think that the black gold just now will be able to help you evolve. No, my spirit value is not enough. I am unable to refine it, but it is definitely something good. Little Fool shook his head. Little Fool looked at Yaya with sympathy. This fool to actually run to the fool to show off. Doesn't it know that the fool is the most narrow-minded and the easiest to get jealous? So pitiful. The group of people came to the front of the rock that the black worms were entrenched on. The rock was roughly the size of a small boat. It was like a big beehive, densely packed and filled with holes. Suddenly Yaya came out. Seeing the rock, he sniffed, pointed at the rock and excitedly gestured. The rock was once again pierced through. At the moment when Tang Tian released his fist, Jing Hao, Crane and Ling Su's eyes shrunk at the same time. Other than the part that Bing took away, the four of them divided the rest of the eggs and everyone's spirit value had an obvious increase. Yaya's change immediately made Tang Tian have an idea. All the insect eggs were filled with the purest spirit origin. To everyone, it was a great supplement, and everyone's spirit value had an obvious increase. Even Bing was attracted by the dense spirit origin undulations and floated out. Yeah. Tang Tian jumped in fright and subconsciously wanted to stop. Yaya jumped around the rock and very quickly returned to Tang Tian, raising his small face, his face full of pride. There was no injury on its body. The fierce collision just now actually did not leave any marks on its body. Bang. In his mind, he imagined himself with a pair of wings and a long tail behind his butt, and immediately felt a chill down his spine. If it was like that, Chia would definitely not like it. But the others completely ignored Tang Tian's ashen face. Can also help you strengthen your spirit treasures. Little Fool added. Little Fool could not believe his eyes. He was unable to use the honorable martial cauldron to refine the black rock, and Yaya refined it just like that? Little Fool wanted to say that it was possible, but seeing the fool's face, if he said that, he would definitely be beaten up. When a blood saint evolves to a certain realm, his body would undergo changes, growing wings and the like was very common. Yaya nodded his head and snatched the black rock, opened his mouth wide, and in front of everyone's dumbstruck eyes, he swallowed the fist-sized black rock into his stomach. Chapter 556. Although it did not have much use for them, but with the principle of not wasting, all the insects along the way were refined into black gold. Tang Tian laughed out loud and fiercely rushed into the sea of light. The four of them shot out like arrows straight into the vast blue sea of light. Tang Tian nodded his head. Ling Su is right, since we have never seen it before we have to rush through, thinking too much is useless. Crane was surprised. What thing can stop this crazy young man? Yes. Tang Tian exposed a smile as bright as the sun. Relax, we will definitely rush through this godlike young man, nothing can stop us. The huge project also caused Little Fool's honorable martial flame to improve rapidly. In a short span of 20 days, the spirit value of the honorable martial flame had already risen to 120 points, and the honorable martial flame had also grown from a small flame to the size of a fist. The pitiful little fool had tears streaming down his cheeks as he looked at the small flame's honorable martial flame. Tang Tian shook his head, his tone was firm. Everyone is accompanying me, of course I will be at the front, and I will also need to use Sexton's eye to find the way. Ling Su's spear shaft coiled and shouted, "Little fool." Until then they suddenly realized that there was a faint light aura in front of them. A month's time passed, everyone moved forward and plundered at the same time. The black gold had outstanding compatibility and could be mixed with various metals. Jing Hao's drunk on saint blood, Crane's demonic feather and Ling Su's silver spear were all strengthened once. Jing Hao and Crane looked at each other and laughed bitterly, the two naive fellows. No one knew what the nature of this strange energy structure was. And in such a vast and dense sea of energy, what would be inside? Just thinking about it caused people to be in awe. Pa pa pa, the concentrated explosions sounded out, and the swarm of insects immediately froze. Ling Su's energy permeated into the black insect's body. Although the surface of the black insect was not injured, but the internal organs in its body were completely turned into mud. Godlike young man, go go go. Tang Tian took out a long rope. It was a silver long whip. It was extremely sturdy. Tang Tian tried, but was unable to break it. Tang Tian was worried that everyone would get lost inside. They still had to walk the path of the zero energy body in the future, and these spirit technique cards did not have much value to them. At this moment, everyone suddenly felt that something was wrong. They had been advancing in the dark void. There was no light in this void. Although Tang Tian and the others could see it as bright as day, it was still pitch black. Crane, you talk so much nonsense, can you still be a godlike young lad? There were a lot of black worms, and the amount of black gold he obtained was also not small. However, the blood furnace in Tang Tian's body was not interested in the black gold. No matter how hard Tang Tian tried, the blood furnace did not absorb the black gold. Tang Tian guessed that his body had absorbed enough black gold and was unable to absorb any more. It's a type of energy. Jing Hao's usually calm face was now filled with shock. So much energy, wrong. Ling Su said proudly, there's still something that can block it. If not for Sexton's eye, they would have long been lost in the sea of rocks. But even so, the endless feeling still affected everyone's morale. Luckily, the four of them were people with firm willpower and were not easily discouraged. After a moment, the empty eye sockets of the golden skull suddenly lit up with two white light auras. A small regiment of black gold flew out and landed in Little Fool's palm. What made Tang Tian even more dumbstruck was that Uncle Bing took out the sky tiger and allowed Little Fool to strengthen it. Tang Tian could still remember Little Fool's exquisite face. In front of the gigantic sky tiger, it was completely lifeless, its expression twitching and its color turning green. They slowed down and flew forward slowly. As they continued to move forward, the area in front of them became brighter and brighter. Be careful, Jing Hao said solemnly. If you encounter danger, pull the rope. What are you curious about? We are rushing in anyway. Ling Su was eager to try. Following the progress of the Big Dipper plan, and with the success of Ling Su, Crane and Jing Hao, the first batch of experimenters, the future of Ursa Major constellation would have even more people walking on this path. Yes, it is very stable. Jing Hao was also carefully feeling the strange energy. But it is also being rejected by our bodies. This is truly a miracle, such a vast ocean of energy. What exactly is inside? It truly makes me curious. All of the black worms were like a black cloud flying towards Little Fool. Little Fool had no choice but to strengthen them bit by bit. The Sky Tiger took a total of 20 days of time, far exceeding the total time spent on strengthening Jing Hao and the rest. I will walk at the front, Jing Hao said. The Honorable Martial Cauldron was an Honorable Martial Alliance weapon refining treasure, and was truly unique. The graceful cold flame from before was no longer suitable for Little Fool. To complement the Honorable Martial Cauldron, Little Fool had specially exchanged for a Honorable Martial Flame Spirit Technique card. Little Fool's Honorable Martial Flame was still lacking compared to Tang Tian's Devil Flame. To melt the black gold and then merge it into a spirit treasure to Little Fool was not an easy task. Especially to strengthen the Sky Tiger, no one had ever refined a mechanical spirit weapon as a spirit treasure, and Little Fool's attainments in the Honorable Martial Flame was still shallow. The strand of Honorable Martial Flame in front of the gigantic Sky Tiger was so small that even Jing Hao felt pity for it. When they passed the last stone, everyone was shocked by the scene in front of them. Blue light. The entire field of vision was filled with blue light. It had to be said, there was nothing that could improve faster than actual battles in the short span of a month. Although the enemy was just a group of worms, but everyone's strength had a huge improvement. Uncle Bing was overjoyed and could not bear to let go. The blue light was like a gigantic light wall, extending to the end of their vision. It was like a blue ocean as vast as a sea of rocks. Let's go, Tang Tian shouted, and the group flew towards the blue light. Honorable Martial Flame was an exclusive spirit technique card of the Honorable Martial Alliance, but compared to Glimmer, it was much weaker. As long as one was willing to pay a high price, it could still be bought in the market. And this card was contributed by Mo Lei, although they had escaped the trial of light, but they were already unable to train in light attribute spirit techniques. The four of them used their whips to form a string. Tang Tian waved his arms, facing the blue sea of light. He exhaled and shouted, "Hey godlike young lad, let's start." The Honorable Martial Flame was not tyrannical at all. On the contrary, it was calm and tranquil. But its effect was much more outstanding than the graceful cold flame. And because they were from the same origin, the Honorable Martial Flame's power increased exponentially inside the Honorable Martial Cauldron. Inside the sea of rocks, the four of them who were in high spirits swept through. Their spoils of war were bountiful. Chia. Ling Su laughed happily. Little Crane, you're truly not as smart as me. Little Fool took out the Honorable Martial Cauldron unhurriedly. The golden skull spewed out a white flame, sweeping all the worm corpses into the golden skull. Without waiting for him to object, Tang Tian waved his hand and agreed. Jing Hao, actually we can think of a more profound slogan. That's right. Crane scoffed. What can stop this crazy young lad? Absolutely nothing can stop him. But after that they did not encounter any black rocks or worm eggs, causing everyone to be disappointed. The increase in quality was very obvious. All the spirit treasures became incomparably sturdy. After a long while, everyone regained their senses. All of their faces were filled with cautiousness. The sea of rocks seemed to have no end. Tang Tian and the rest were also plundering the black worms, but their speed did not slow down at all. But after advancing for an entire month, the scenery did not change at all. Crane was speechless. Ling Su casually thrusted his spear out, the spear tip suddenly blossoming into countless of silver auras, enveloping the swarm of worms. Ling Su gently swung his spear body, only to see the rain of silver auras suddenly slanting in the air, like many fine silver whips. The silver whips struck the back of the black worm's paw. The black worms froze. The rain of black shadows pounced towards them like angry arrows. Little Fool and Bing were also shocked, speechless by the scene. This energy is very strange. I have never seen it before. It is not very berserk, but on the contrary it is very stable. In Crane's hand floated a blue aura, which he had plucked from the edge of the sea of blue light. Ling Su stared blankly at the endless blue light in front of him. This thing? How can we fight? Crane waved his hand, trying to find happiness in the midst of bitterness. Actually, I have always been pulled down. This caused the four of them to look at each other, all revealing a look of caution. What is this thing? Tang Tian muttered. Tang Tian could only watch as Little Fool helped Jing Hao, Crane and Ling Su strengthened their spirit treasures. This blue light aura was clearly separated from the sea of rocks, but as far as the eye could see, it was similarly boundless. Jinghao laughed bitterly. You jinx. Ling Su, kill kill kill. Jinghao could not help but smile, the anxiousness in his heart dissipated by half. Being together with this group of brainless fellows was quite good at times. Fighting is boring, not fighting is even more boring. Ling Su said angrily, casually shooting a stone into pieces. Now is the best time for a powerful fellow to come out. Let me have a good fight. After being mixed with the black gold, Sky Tiger's toughness became extremely astonishing. Without using spirit techniques, Tang Tian was unable to even leave a mark on Sky Tiger. So boring. Ling Su was slightly irritated. Every day there are worms, worms, worms. I feel like vomiting every time I see worms. Flying closer to the blue light, Tang Tian and the rest felt that they were extremely insignificant. The azure blue Sky Tiger was forcefully dyed with a layer of black, becoming a deep blue, although it was not as bright as before, but it had a bit more power. Although everyone did not have much hesitation, but even Tang Tian was extremely careful. Little Fool and Bing were both hidden in his body. The blue light was a type of energy and his body was able to repel the energy, so it was not dangerous, but Little Fool and Uncle Bing were much more dangerous. There truly is a sea of energy in this world. Crane muttered. Such a vast amount of energy by itself was filled with deterrence, and even the strongest saints in front of it would be overshadowed. Everyone connect your bodies. The black gold already had no effect on them, but along the way they would still reap it out of habit. That's true, no matter what, we have to rush through. Jinghao said. The goal of this trip was the Sacred Saint Galaxy. They had no way out. Even if the blue light was filled with danger, they had to rush through. Crane said lazily. But every time, you are still the first to make a move. Look, we are too lazy to make a move. Little Fool closed his eyes and continued to form hand seals. Chapter 557. It is formed from energy crystallization. Crane carefully sized it up. He realized that the blue coral body was continuously growing, but the growth was extremely slow. Advancing forward became extremely difficult. It was as though they were walking in water, and in the end, everyone decided to use swimming movements. The brittle ice blue tree branch actually did not break. Tang Tian extended out his palm, gently bent, and broke off a section of the blue coral. Seeing that, everyone else also took action. As far as the eyes could see, there were many big and small sky ice trees, densely packed with no end in sight. Little Fool's spirit-devouring flame quietly imprinted itself on the back of a blue dwarf. The blue dwarf's body froze. The spirit-devouring flame was like a water droplet that seeped into its body. In the blink of an eye, it flew out from its chest, and the blue dwarf's body floated in its original position, dead. The ice blue tree branch that he was mocking just now had an extremely strange power. Following his spear body, it directly entered his meridians. An unknown cold intent permeated into his body, causing a slight numbness to spread throughout his body. Crane carried Ling Su on his back. His body turned like a wisp of smoke. He dodged the whistling ice blue tree branch with a flick of his wrist. The gold crane sword suddenly spat out a white sword aura, entering the blue dwarf's body. Drunk on Saint blood in Jinghao's hand, welcomed the incoming ice blue tree branch and lightly slapped it. The blue dwarf who threw the ice blue tree branch revealed a look of ecstasy, but following that, its happy look froze on its face. Upon receiving Tang Tian's reminder, Ling Su's first reaction, without thinking, the silver spear in his hand suddenly thrusted out, the concentrated silver rain, sprinkling out, protecting everyone inside. Ling Su lost consciousness, his face revealing a layer of strange blue, his hair and eyebrows covered with a layer of frost. Tang Tian roared. The bright red devil flame extended out from his palm. Ling Su's injuries made him extremely angry. Tang Tian, who had successfully attacked, arched his back without even looking. With his body as the axis, he swung his fist behind him. The fist struck the head of a blue dwarf that was pouncing over, causing the blue dwarf to fall. The powerful force caused the blue dwarf's body to change shape, bending into a bow. His ferocious face was now filled with fear. Tang Tian was also a little uncertain after hearing what the two of them said. The Holy Maiden staff held an extremely high position in Virgo constellation. It was the staff wielded by the first-generation Holy Maiden Li Zhen. and was one of the most famous and top-grade gold spirit treasures of Virgo constellation. Upon entering this blue light, it was not as dazzling as it appeared from the outside. It was clear and azure like the bottom of the sea. Suddenly, from the corner of Tang Tian's eyes, something seemed to have flashed past the forest. He was shocked and immediately shouted, "Be careful." Little Fool floated out and saw these little people with strange blue skin. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Blue dwarves." It was as if the blue dwarf had been hit by a wild beast. He did not even have the time to scream before he was sent flying. There were not many problems with this battle, but why were there blue dwarves here? The other party let out a muffled groan and no longer breathed. They spoke in a language that Tang Tian couldn't understand. They kept screaming and waving their arms, looking murderous. At their waists, there were blue branches of ice blue which were obviously their weapons. Before he finished speaking, countless of blue arrows suddenly shot out from the Empyrean ice forest in front of them. He had specially spent a lot of effort to sweep through all of Senior Gui Wu's treasured books, but he did not expect it to be of use at such a time. Ding ding ding. Crane's description was much more accurate. It is truly unique. The purity of the energy crystal is much faster than star rocks. But the structure of the energy is too stable and we can't use it well. Crane and Jing Hao were startled, but immediately revealed ecstasy. The two of them had heard of the Empyrean ice tree. Crane, who was at the back, heard Little Fool's exclamation, and his pupils constricted. He did not retreat but advanced instead, his orange pupils blazing. He bellowed, becoming one with his spear like an explosion of silver rain, bringing forth an imposing manner. He clashed with the incoming Empyrean ice tree branches. Countless ice shards flew. Ling Su groaned, and flew back at an even faster speed, the whip on his waist releasing a force that caused everyone's body to sway. What a strange energy crystal. Tang Tian carefully sensed it and was surprised. Everyone's eyes immediately turned red. Crane was slow by half a beat. He forcefully stopped himself, grabbed Ling Su and tied Ling Su to his back. It shouldn't be the Empyrean ice tree, Jing Hao said. The blue arrows were as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, they had arrived in front of everyone. Tang Tian and the rest were extremely careful. The blue light around them was isolated. The four of them had zero energy bodies. Tang Tian's zero energy body was the most outstanding. The blue light was blocked 1.5 m away from his body, and the other three's repulsive effect was much weaker than Tang Tian's. Everyone's mind was roused. The resistance in the sea of blue light was huge, and it consumed a lot of energy, and in such a foreign environment, they had to maintain a high level of mental tension, and unknowingly their energy was drained. Tang Tian bellowed and fiercely pulled the silver whip on his waist. Tang Tian's strength was much stronger than usual, and the sturdy silver whip was broken by him. Bang! After advancing for a few li, Tang Tian saw the scene in front of him and gave up on scavenging. Countless of blue dwarves, like a tide, were screaming and rushing towards them. Who knew they would actually meet the legendary blue dwarves here? If the energy structure is stable, it can be used to refine spirit treasures. Jing Hao added from the side. He and Crane were extremely knowledgeable. Tang Tian could clearly see that the triangular face was filled with killing intent and madness. Ling Su. He pounced towards the nearest blue dwarf, but the blue dwarf was not afraid. It screamed out. Grabbing onto an ice blue tree branch, it pounced towards Tang Tian like lightning. Tang Tian was suddenly overjoyed. I know what this is. Empyrean ice tree. That is the Empyrean ice tree. Senior Gui Wu had mentioned it before. I was wondering why it looked so familiar. The four of them immediately swam over, only to see a blue coral. Its body was irregular like a tree branch, sparkling and translucent. Tang Tian and the rest surrounded the ice blue coral, clicking their tongues in wonder. The blue coral was about the height of 3 people. Before it could recover from the shock, the person holding the sword pierced it from afar. There was no light, no sound, nothing. Its chest suddenly felt a sharp pain and its vision turned black. After advancing for a few li, the scenery gradually changed. Tang Tian's eyes were sharp, and noticed something in front of them. What is that? But he did not retreat half a step. The situation did not allow him to retreat. If he were to retreat, then everyone would be exposed to the rain of blue arrows, and they would completely fall into a passive state. How is that possible? Tang Tian stared angrily at Ling Su. You want to fight? Idiot. Tang Tian, who was in a completely berserk state, did not care about the blue dwarves, Even if it was the legendary god in front of him, he would still smash it with his fist. Only then did he see what had attacked them. It was a group of little blue people about a meter tall. Their skin was a strange blue color and their faces were inverted triangles. Their long and narrow eyes were blood red, and their faces were ferocious. But they changed their direction and flew towards another direction. Jing Hao's eyes were filled with frost. He used his sword to cut the whip tied to his waist and rushed out. To grow so tall they must have grown for at least a few tens of thousands of years. It was the first time Jing Hao had seen such a thing. Do you want me to cut one down to see what it is? Tang Tian's body flashed, moving like a ghost. He appeared beside the blue dwarf, his fist enveloped in devil flame, firmly striking the blue dwarf's waist. And there are so many Empyrean ice trees, what about the sky? Crane joked. Crazy Tang, quickly look at your Empyrean ice trees. Ling Su was overjoyed. To rub salt into Tang Tian's wound was obviously a meaningful thing to do. Ling Su groaned, his body trembling. Jing Hao's suggestion was approved by everyone. Blue dwarves were terrifying creatures. Although they looked like miniature humans, they did not have any intelligence and were cold and bloodthirsty, completely unafraid of death. What was even more terrifying was the blue dwarves' strong reproduction ability. They were able to reproduce many generations in a short period of time. Because of that, their race was extremely large, and the scene of them surging towards the enemy like a tide would cause anyone's scalp to go numb. That was the terrifying blue sea. Go and die. The dense blue energy surged around the four of them. They were like pebbles thrown into the calm water, causing ripples. Right, I must be wrong. Empyrean ice trees. Jing Hao was unsure. Could it be something similar? I also feel that the Empyrean ice trees should not be so big. Tang Tian's expression was embarrassed. He also felt that he was wrong. How could there be so many Empyrean ice trees? They were extremely rare treasures. But with the principle of not wasting, he still kept them along the way. Ice fragments flew everywhere. Only then did Tang Tian see clearly. The flying blue arrows were actually Empyrean ice tree branches. Luckily, such terrifying creatures were extremely rare, and only appeared in legends. Many saints even suspected if such creatures truly existed in the world. Crane heaved a sigh of relief. The blue dwarf's strength was average. It was the Empyrean ice tree branches that were weird. Without needing his reminder, Tang Tian and Jing Hao could also see it. The two of them completely avoided the tree branches. Suddenly, Crane sensed something. He raised his head and looked deep into the forest, his face changing. The legends say that Virgo constellation's gold spirit treasure, Saint Maiden's staff, was made from the Empyrean ice tree, drawing in the power of the stars, and after thousands of years, it was refined and nurtured. Could this be the Empyrean ice tree? Crane looked at the Empyrean ice tree that was as tall as 3 people and said absent-mindedly, "This tree is too big." Ling Su shook his head and swam to Tang Tian and said, "Crazy Tang said he wanted an Empyrean ice tree, so God gave him an entire Empyrean ice forest." Empyrean ice tree. Tang Tian thought about it and kept the Empyrean ice tree. Willful. Ding. Who cares what it is, let's keep it first. Ling Su said impatiently. Inside the forest, countless of blue arrows flew out, but Tang Tian did not block them, and dodged like a ghost, weaving through the blue arrows, and in the blink of an eye he had reached the edge of the forest. They continued forward, and very quickly they discovered another Empyrean ice tree, and not long later they met another. Chapter 558. Tang Tian did not care about Little Fool's strong opposition, and gave a large number of Gui Wu's ancient records to the Blood Meridian's laboratory. Gui Wu's ancient records had greatly increased the strength of the Blood Meridian's laboratory, and the current strength of the Blood Meridian's laboratory far exceeded the expectations of outsiders. But Old Man Fei and the rest did not have any outstanding achievements, and Tang Tian still treated them like that. While they were moved, they also held back a burst of energy. The lightning speed, the berserk power, caused every attack of Tang Tian's to be filled with the beauty of power without any fanciness. It was concise, straightforward, and neat like a wild beast wreaking havoc. It was a pity that the energy concentration here was too astonishing, and was not suitable for spirit techniques. If not combined with Blink, he would be a human harvester. The sky full of blue arrows was like a black cloud flying towards the 4 of them. Other than the eggs, he still had a large amount of black gold. A portion was given to Sai Lei and the other was given to Old Man Fei. Tang Tian had absorbed the black gold, which meant that the black gold could also be used to strengthen his body. The blue energy that was as congealed as water revolved and surged. A whistling sound came out from above. Tang Tian did not even raise his head, he lowered his body and plunged into the group of people below. Without any fanciness, the strong power immediately flipped over a few blue dwarves along the way. In the sea of blue light, his pure physical strength was the most powerful. Tang Tian's speed was extremely fast. The resistance of the sea of blue light did not seem to affect his body at all. He only felt a burning flame in his chest. His entire body had an endless amount of energy. The three of them followed closely behind Yaya's umbrella. They wanted to take the chance to rush into the group of blue dwarves. Only then would they have a chance. The ice blue tree branches were extremely strange and were extremely threatening to them. This cannot go on. Everyone's footsteps had already slowed down, and the frequency of their attacks had also decreased. Compared to Jing Hao's simple and unsophisticated style, Crane was extremely free and unrestrained, like a black crane dancing lightly. Even with Ling Su on his back when he moved, there was not a bit of smoke or fire chi. The huge sea of blue light was like an angry beast. Countless of whirlpools, twisting ripples, surged endlessly in the sea of blue light. The next scene made Tang Tian dumbfounded. Suddenly, his gaze locked onto a blue dwarf with a slightly different appearance. That blue dwarf's blue skin was darker than the average blue dwarf's, and it had a metallic texture to it. Tang Tian's spirit was roused and he rushed towards the blue dwarf. Just at this moment, the blue dwarf suddenly let out a scream of terror. The entire crazy battlefield after this scream of terror became momentarily silent. Those blue dwarves that were about to pounce towards the four of them in a frenzy stopped in their tracks. Their faces were filled with fear. Kakaka. The branches rained down on Yaya's umbrella, causing countless ice shards to fly everywhere. Yaya's umbrella exploded and a powerful shockwave swept out, causing the icy blue branches to shatter into ice shards. Everyone's expression changed. Tang Tian was dumbfounded. Hey, we were just fighting for our lives. The terrifying scream caused everyone's scalp to go numb. Tang Tian's eyes widened in anger. Little fool. No one noticed that in the tranquil sea of blue light, a terrifying storm was brewing. The four of them were overwhelmed with shock. The endless ice blue forest, as though it was being ruthlessly crushed by an invisible hand, their vision was filled with shattered ice shards. He had a premonition that these eggs were priceless. Before Tang Tian could react, the rest of them had disappeared without a trace. Tang Tian felt that everywhere around him were the fierce triangular faces of the blue dwarves, as though the blue dwarves could never be completely killed. The crazy battle had already lasted for half an hour, and even Tang Tian himself could not remember how many blue dwarves he had killed. His entire body was covered in the strange blue blood of the blue dwarves. His physical strength was rapidly depleting, and both of his arms were sore. 3 Spirits City, Blood Meridian's laboratory. His gaze swept across the entire battlefield. To capture the bandits, first capture the ringleader. The unpleasant screams were filled with endless ruthlessness and anger, as they continuously surged from all directions. This blue dwarf was like a ball that was sent flying, fiercely crashing into his comrade behind him. This comrade could not dodge in time and spat out a mouthful of blue blood, and at the same time flew out horizontally, crashing into a large group of people. This is the first time I've seen such a mystical thing. Old Man Fei's face was filled with surprise. The spirit origin contained within it is richer than any other species, and its spirit origin contains the law of life, and has extremely good healing properties, and can be used to heal injuries to spirit domains. Old Man Fei continued excitedly. This black gold is also very special. It is extremely beneficial to the evolution of blood meridians, but we are still researching on it. Looking at it, the blue dwarves were like an endless ocean with no end in sight. All of the repulsive triangular faces made Tang Tian feel nauseous. The blue dwarves were like a receding tide, leaving behind a floor of corpses, screaming as they ran. They were like a small wooden boat struggling in the raging waves of the sea, unable to control themselves. In a moment, they were scattered and scattered. The blue dwarves all raised their Empyrean ice tree branches, and rushed towards Tang Tian and the rest. In the blink of an eye, the 4 of them left behind a floor of corpses, but the blue dwarves did not have any fear of retreating. Little Fool's reaction was the fastest. He suddenly transformed into a ray of light. and entered Tang Tian's energy furnace. The stable blue energy was currently extremely dangerous and berserk. So when they received the worm eggs and black gold, the entire Blood Meridian's laboratory seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. Tang Tian's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "It's you." Tang Tian's face changed. A strong sense of danger enveloped his mind, causing all the hairs on his body to stand. He only had time to let out a cry of surprise, and saw the sea of blue light in front of him. Like a monster that had awoken from its slumber, it became extremely violent. Not good. Little Fool did not care about Yaya's umbrella. His exquisite face was cold. Without saying a word, he rushed forward and took out the ocean prison sword that was stained with void dark flames. Bang! Little Fool's mouth twitched. Being bossed around by the fool, he was extremely impatient, but he could not do anything. He snorted. The tip of Yaya's umbrella pointed forward. He fiercely rubbed the umbrella handle, causing Yaya's umbrella to explode with light aura. Like a gigantic light shield, he spun and rushed forward. Bang! Tang Tian knew that Yaya's umbrella would definitely not be able to hold on and shouted, "Rush over!" Tang Cho, Sai Lei and Bell were personally holding the fort, with over 16 saints and the mechanical army stationed at the same time. Sounds of bodies colliding came out and 7 to 8 figures exploded out. "I'll be busy first," Old Man Fei said, and then left in a hurry. He was in high spirits and felt that it would be a waste of time to speak, so he left impatiently. Bing had finally waited for the reinforcements to arrive, and the reinforcements this time were extremely sufficient. 3 Spirit City would become the hub connecting Tang Tian and Ursa Major Constellation, and its strategic position was self-evident. Although in terms of attainments in the sword he could not compare to Jing Hao, but his killing intent was heavy, and was more captivating than Jing Hao's. The ghostly figure, the cold and indifferent expression, the ocean prison sword was like a black mist lingering around, cold to the bone. Bing was not angry at all, but was filled with anticipation and longing. Bing was finally relieved and prepared to go back, but at that moment his face suddenly changed. Tang Tian was in trouble. Jing Hao seemed to be taking a stroll. Every sword was clear and distinct, but no one was able to dodge, as though the opponent was stupidly sending himself to his sword. The 4 of them heaved a sigh of relief. They were at the end of their rope and all of them were exhausted. Other than Tang Tian, the rest were used to using spirit techniques, and purely using physical strength was not their forte. Tang Tian's body was much stronger than theirs, and after absorbing the black gold he was greatly strengthened, but even so he felt that he could not continue. The other 3's situation was even worse. Bing's body trembled. Can it heal spirit general injuries? Little Fool lightly shook the sword body, and the spirit-devouring flame quietly flew into the ocean prison sword, and at the edge of the void dark flames, there was an additional layer of faint light aura. No. Bing's poker face could not contain his ecstasy. If Old Man Fei's conclusion was proven, then it meant that Screw could be healed. The tide of blue dwarves saw Tang Tian and the rest and cried out weirdly and threw out the tree branches in their hands. The ice-blue tree branches were as straight as spears. The blue dwarves turned and ran with all their might. Even when they passed by him, it was as though they did not see him. The long and ferocious ocean prison sword was held in a tender little hand, flowing with black flames. The delicate and adorable figure was indescribably weird. Tang Tian was no longer a newbie on the battlefield. After battle he had long grown unknowingly. He needed to find the leader of the group of blue dwarves. Only then could he end the endless battle. 3 Spirit City also had plans to expand once again. For safety considerations, the first thing he did was to increase the strength of 3 Spirit City's garrison. Before the reinforcements arrived, he was stationed here and even Yaya was kidnapped by him. Yes, in theory. Old Man Fei nodded his head, but we need to experiment before we can get an accurate conclusion. He glanced at the rest. Everyone's situation was not good. The energy here was too dense, and it was a unique and stable energy, causing their spirit techniques to be unable to be used. Not far from Tang Tian, Little Fool was waving the ocean prison sword in his hand. Every time he waved, it would take away a few lives. Although the spirit-devouring flame's killing power was strong, but the efficiency of killing was far from the ocean prison sword. A powerful force suddenly came from behind them. Everyone felt the world spinning around them. In front of such a vast force, they were unable to stabilize their bodies. How is it? Bing could not help but ask Old Man Fei. He had specially sent the eggs to 3 Spirit City's Blood Meridian's laboratory. He had never seen such a mystical object before and was curious if the eggs could be nurtured. And Tang Tian and the rest took the opportunity to kill their way into the group of blue dwarves. A huge wave formed behind Tang Tian, fiercely smashing into his back, causing Tang Tian to spit out a mouthful of blood. His vision turned black and he lost consciousness. Bang! Tang Tian's figure shifted in front of the other party's startled and frightened gaze. Bringing along an afterimage, his fist quietly landed on the other party's chest, a strong force surging out. Chapter 559. Xiao Yu pursed his lips tightly, his face was filled with anxiety. Wake up, quickly wake up, don't fall asleep. The house was made of stone, taking up a large area. It was made of black bricks, and on the black bricks there were obvious knife marks. What is a grass sword? Tang Tian could not help but ask. Xiao Yu scratched his smooth little head. You have to ask master about this. Once he opened his mouth, Tang Tian was shocked by his own dry and hoarse voice. Seeing that, Tang Tian stood up without hesitation and picked up Xiao Yu. Which way? But the one who was even more surprised was Tang Tian. His intuition was extremely sharp. The moment he saw the villagers, his heart was shaken. He smelled the scent of the saint on these villagers. The little boy puffed out his chest and said with a proud face, "Of course. I am the best at collecting red reed's pith in the village. Red reed's pith can only be formed from red reed sword grass that is over 200 years old. You can't tell from the outside. Only red reeds that are over 200 years old can be used to refine grass swords." Xiao Yu immediately pointed in the direction of the village. Over there. Red grass beach. The little boy looked up and replied. Very quickly, the scenery became even more desolate. The ground was covered with black gravel and a dried-up riverbed could be seen, but from the width, the river was extremely vast. Did you find anyone else? Tang Tian asked. He was worried about the other 3. The 2 of them were shocked. It was the first time they had heard of someone who could run so fast, to actually fly faster than the villagers. Tang Tian nodded and rushed to the little girl's side like an arrow. He picked her up, placed her on each shoulder and ran. But seeing little Fool sleeping peacefully in the Gemini furnace, Tang Tian felt that this was good. At least little Fool could wake up faster. Let little Fool have it easy. Suddenly Tang Tian raised his head in the grass far away. A little girl shouted anxiously, "Xiao Yu, your brother is injured." "Xiao Yu, do you know about the blue dwarves?" Tang Tian asked. All right. The little boy patted Tang Tian's shoulder and said in a grown-up tone, "Don't worry, even if you are a savage I will not discriminate against you." Tang Tian thought for a while and said, "You can call me Big Brother Meng Nan." Previously, Tang Tian had thought that the conditions in the sacred region would be superior, but he did not expect it to be superior to this extent. No wonder Chia said that there were many saints in the sacred region. With such dense energy, the difficulty of becoming a saint would be greatly reduced. According to Senior Gui Wu's theory, a baby born in such an environment would have an affinity with energy that was far from what a Heaven's Road person could compare to. Mengnan. Xiao Yu's expression froze. He curled his lips. "Big Brother Mengnan, you don't look fierce at all." The strength that Tang Tian displayed was astonishing. The concentration of energy in the surroundings caused Tang Tian to tremble with fear. Tang Tian dared to confirm that even if it was the 12 ecliptic palaces, the concentration of energy would not be so terrifying. He could practically see the flow of energy in the air. Savage. Tang Tian's face twitched even more. Seeing that, Tang Tian did not slow down but roared, "Everyone move aside." Tang Tian was like an arrow rushing into the house. "Of course it's a sword," the little boy said with the face of an adult. "It is called red reed sword grass. It naturally contains sword intent. Using it to refine grass swords is extremely powerful." The little boy shook his head. "I just found you. You were lying on the ground." Xiao Yu's face changed. He wanted to run back. His body was originally small and skinny, and dragging the grass basket made him stumble. "What is this place?" The blank expression on Tang Tian's face gradually disappeared. He struggled to stand up. "Where are the others?" Such a terrifying concentration of energy to any martial artist would definitely make them ecstatic. His consciousness returned to his body and the voice above his head became clearer. It was the voice of a little boy. Tang Tian struggled to open his eyes, and what entered his vision was a few thin and tough red thorny grass. like a saw blade, cutting his face painfully. Beneath him was a patch of mud and a rotten smell assaulted his nostrils. Tang Tian felt his head hurting, he groaned and subconsciously twisted his body. Sigh, his face in the mud could not help but twitch, his entire body, every part of his body was in pain. Such an environment was not beneficial to Tang Tian's zero-energy body, but it was extremely beneficial to Little Fool. Although Chia had long said that there were many saints in the sacred saint galaxy, but seeing it with his own eyes, his mind was still shaken. Hey, wake up. Are you all right? Tang Tian patted his chest, wanting to show off his strength, but in the end accidentally pulled on his wounds, causing him to grit his teeth, and the pain caused his face to twitch. Xiao Yu shook his head. He truly picked up a savage. He had long heard that savages like to use words like fierce, tyrant, iron and copper to name themselves, but to name himself as fierce man, that must be an old-fashioned sense of beauty. That's great. You're awake. The voice above his head was filled with joy. Two skinny arms pulled on Tang Tian, wanting to pull Tang Tian up, but the boy's strength was too weak. The more the boy looked at Tang Tian, the more he felt that he looked like one and was enlightened. So you really are a savage. I heard that savages have copper skin and iron bones and have boundless strength. You don't look strong, but to be able to jump into the sky seems like you have great strength. Tang Tian was disappointed. He gathered his remaining strength and fiercely stepped on the ground. Like a rocket, he quickly shot into the sky. The red grass beach was not big and could be seen with a glance, but he did not see any traces of other people, causing him to be even more disappointed. Losing all of his strength, he dropped to the ground. Little Fool was in deep sleep and he was unable to fly. To find them, Tang Tian thought of the blue dwarves. Hearing Xiao Yu speaking in such an adult tone, Tang Tian felt that it was interesting. Then where is the nearest blue swamp? Blue dwarves? I know they live in the blue swamp and are the most hated creatures. Xiao Yu had a mischievous look on his face. Many continents have blue swamps. They are not strong, but there are too many of them and we can't kill them all. Luckily they rarely leave the blue swamp, if not it would be a huge problem. Xiao Yu was certain that Big Brother Mengnan was a savage. The savage continent was famous for being proficient in running. If Big Brother Mengnan was not proficient in running, then what was? The boy shook his head. Do you have any other teammates? I don't see anyone else. Tang Tian was not sure. Since it was the Sacred Saint Galaxy, Tang Tian did not dare to reveal his real name. If the temple spread his name to the Sacred Saint Galaxy, it would be dangerous. He decided to give himself a flashy name, but what should he call it? Godlike young lad? Young god? Godlike man? Mengnan? The strongest fierce man? Tang Tian did not speak any nonsense and directly rushed into the village. Some of the villagers sensed that something was amiss and immediately rushed out, but when they saw Xiao Yu on Tang Tian's shoulder, they revealed a look of understanding and sympathy, and only looked at Tang Tian a few more times. You were the one who saved me? On the flat and desolate dry riverbed of black gravel, the lonely village could be seen from afar. The boy looked at Tang Tian in disdain. One look and I can tell that you did not study properly. You don't even know common sense. Are grass swords used to chop? Don't tell me you are a savage from the savage continent? The boy saw Tang Tian rushing into the sky, and his eyes revealed a look of surprise. He was already in the Sacred Saint Galaxy, but what Tang Tian did not expect was that the Sacred Saint Galaxy was much bigger than he had imagined. The Sacred Saint Galaxy was divided into continents. The Sacred Saint Galaxy had tens of thousands of continents, and every continent had different sizes. The bigger continents had thousands of planets, while the smaller continents only had one planet. In a daze, Tang Tian seemed to hear someone calling him. The unfamiliar voice gave him a focal point in his daze, as though a crack had opened up in the darkness, allowing a ray of sunlight to shine through. This is the red reed pith root. The boy raised his head and displayed his spoils of war. This can be sold for a good price, but only those that are as red as blood can be sold. They are very hard to dig. Now that he was separated from Ling Su and the rest, his first task was to find them. Grass sword. Tang Tian's face twitched. What's the use of a grass sword? Wouldn't it be broken with just one slash? Tang Tian. I'm not a savage. Tang Tian explained. Tang Tian brought along a blurry afterimage. Like a gust of wind, he swept across the wilderness. Xiao Yu and the little girls' faces turned pale white. Tang Tian's speed was too fast. The wind blowing on their faces was as painful as knives cutting them. and it made it hard for them to breathe and they could not even open their eyes. "Big brother Savage, what's your name?" the boy asked curiously. Without waiting for Tang Tian to reply, he patted his chest and said, "I am called Xiao Yu." While chatting with Xiao Yu, Tang Tian checked the injuries on his body. His blurry vision gradually became clear. What entered his eyes was a desolate beach, covered with dark red grass that were as long as blades. Looking from afar, it looked like a forest of swords. No matter what, Xiao Yu had saved him. Now that Xiao Yu was in trouble, he could not just stand by and watch. Tang Tian's head was dizzy, but he still struggled to climb up. His movements were too big and pulled on his wounds, causing his entire face to contort in pain. The house that was surrounded so tightly that not even a drop of water could pass through, immediately exploded and dispersed. 200%. 300%. Almost every villager was a saint. Sitting in the mud, Tang Tian's dispirited gaze gradually found its focus. The boy in front of him was roughly 11 or 12 years old. His body was weak and skinny, his head was smooth and shiny, his clear black eyes made him look extremely intelligent, and he was carrying a large straw basket that did not match his body size. Tang Tian descended. Seeing the surprised look on the boy's face, he could not help but smile. He sat beside the boy and asked for information. "Should I be more low profile? It really looks like a blood marrow." Tang Tian sized it up curiously. It was warm to the touch, bright red like jade. He could feel that it was not ordinary. Tang Tian became interested. He casually picked up a few red thatch sword grass. All of them were light red. "It seems to be powerful." The continent that Tang Tian was currently in was called the Shang continent. The Shang continent was extremely small, with only 3 planets, which were Qinggu, Huili, and Red Grass Star. Tang Tian was on the Red Grass Star, which was named after the red thatch sword grass. The red grass sword grass was shaped like a long sword. Its entire body was dark red and as tough as steel. Its only use was its roots. "That's my house." Xiao Yu anxiously pointed to the house with the most people. Chapter 560. Everyone was stunned by Sky Tiger's beautiful and exquisite appearance, and no one noticed Yaya, who was on top of Sky Tiger's head. But very quickly he regained his composure. Knowing that it was a rare opportunity, he bowed to Little Fool. "Please guide me." Suddenly his vision darkened. A gigantic shadow enveloped his frail body. An exquisite and strange metal giant appeared in front of him. "Oh my God, Blue Tide! Big brother Mengnan! Is that a spirit?" Xiao Yu's face was filled with excitement, his words incoherent. Although his aura was not as strong as a Heaven's Road saint, but the smell of a saint was something that Tang Tian would not mistake. He had some suspicions in his heart, although they were all saints, but the saints of the Sacred Saint Galaxy were obviously different from the saints of Heaven's Road. Xiao Yu's face revealed an embarrassed expression. He felt that he was displaying his slight skill in front of an expert. Such a crude grass sword in front of these important people was not worth mentioning. Little Fool summoned out the Honorable Martial Cauldron. The Honorable Martial Flame enveloped the red reed's pith root, quietly burning. After about 7 to 8 minutes, the red reed's pith root that was as thick as a finger had become extremely soft, sparkling and translucent, extremely beautiful. The originally faint sword concept had become even more obvious, revealing its edge. On the faces of the villagers, there was still some hesitation, but everyone subconsciously gathered in front of Tang Tian. The floating Sky Tiger beside Tang Tian made many people secretly guess that Tang Tian was definitely a big figure in a big city. "If we can endure through these few days, we will be able to live." Xiao Yu's voice was hoarse, his eyes red. "Blue dwarves." Tang Tian's eyes suddenly lit up with 2 light auras, but he was quickly attracted by another term that Xiao Yu said, "Blue Tide." Hearing Little Fool's words, Xiao Yu's face flushed red. Xiao Yu turned his head, wanting to remind Tang Tian to quickly escape, but when he saw Big Brother Mengnan's expression, he was stunned. Big Brother Mengnan's face was sinister. He was extremely bloodthirsty, he muttered to himself, but the killing intent contained within caused his heart to tremble. "Is he all right?" Tang Tian asked Xiao Yu with concern. No matter how stupid he was, he could tell that Xiao Yu was in trouble. However, what surprised him was that Xiao Yu seemed to be very good at healing. A few unknown ingredients were ground into powder and mixed with water. In Heaven's Road, this was called the Blue Sea. In Sacred Saint Galaxy, this was called the Blue Tide. No matter where it was, when such a scene appeared in front of them, It represented death, represented 1,000 li of scarlet land. The waiter glanced at Tang Tian and said, "Saint Domain, there's something strange." Little Fool said indifferently, "You don't have a Saint Domain, so it's not easy to control these flames. However, it's not like there's no way. I need to think about it. You should go and comprehend your harvest first." The Blue Dwarves' main camp was in the void. Tang Tian was deep in thought. If the Blue Swamp was a crack that led to the void, then wouldn't he be able to pass through the Blue Swamp and kill his way to the Blue Dwarves' main camp? Senior. Xiao Yu's face was full of sincerity as she held the grass sword and left. Along the way, all the villagers looked at Xiao Yu with envy. Just as he was about to ask Xiao Yu where the nearest Blue Swamp was, there was a sudden commotion outside, and cries of fear could be heard incessantly. The faint red beam of light flashed in front of Tang Tian's eyes. Whoosh! Tang Tian guessed that Ling Su and the rest were most likely in the hands of the Blue Dwarves. Once an expert made a move, one would know if they were real or not. Bing quickly followed the defenses of the village, and methodically set up a defensive line. The villagers saw hope and all of them became more enthusiastic. Xiao Yu, whose eyes were red, carefully covered his brother with a blanket. Tang Tian wanted to say something but was interrupted by the waiter. "That's right." The surrounding villagers all had pale faces, their faces full of fear. "Is it Firewalker? Or Argus?" Xiao Yu's eyes lit up but he shook his head and muttered to himself, "No, Firewalker is red and Argus is gray." But if he was not by Tang Tian's side, if Tang Tian was in danger. After fighting so many battles, although the current Tang Tian could not be called a famous general, but he was definitely not a newbie in the battlefield. Now that the Blue Dwarves were approaching aggressively, and their morale was high, rushing forward now was courting death. "Yes, I was born without a Saint Domain and I don't know why," Xiao Yu said honestly, but his eyes still flashed a trace of sadness. A tender little hand snatched the grass sword from his hand. But in the eyes of the red-eyed Tang Tian, it only reminded him of the battle at the Blue Light Sea, and reminded him of his missing comrades, causing the killing intent in his heart to boil. 2 minutes later, a 3-inch-long exquisite and translucent grass sword that looked like it was weaved from blood-colored glass, appeared in front of everyone. "Xiao Yu, you seem different from them." Tang Tian hesitated for a while but still asked. When he jumped over the walls of the village, looking at the scenery outside, he could not help but take in a breath of cold air. At the end of the vast and desolate black riverbed, a blue line was advancing towards them. The blue line stuck closely to the horizon, was densely packed and one could not see the end of the Blue Dwarves. Unknowingly, the crazy young man had already become the leader of the entire group, and his position was irreplaceable. Xiao Yu was ecstatic and immediately took out the red reed's pith that he had just dug. "All right." Bing did not decline and started to arrange the defense. Previously, when he sensed that Tang Tian was injured, his heart was in his throat, but Tang Tian was unconscious and he had no way of coming out. Xiao Yu heard Big Brother Meng Nan talking to the air and was startled. Xiao Yu's face was pale white, his body trembling. The light beam pierced through the walls of the house, leaving behind 3 finger-sized holes and pierced through the entire house. Luckily there was no one in the house, if not he would have been in danger. "For you." Little Fool waved his hand and the grass sword landed in Xiao Yu's hands. So when he heard Tang Tian calling him out, he heaved a sigh of relief. Xiao Yu's face changed. Tang Tian picked him up and rushed out. Tang Tian was confused what fire traveler Augustin, but he noticed something else. Out of everyone, only Xiao Yu was not a saint. "Materials." Little Fool said coldly. "Big Brother Meng Nan, your mechanical giant is so powerful. Is it a general?" Xiao Yu looked at Sky Tiger, his face full of surprise. At this time in the wilderness, it would not be any safer than the village, and having separated from the main group, the chances of survival was very low. "That's great, I was just about to go and find you guys." "Yes." Xiao Yu's face was full of worry. The Blue Dwarves' reproduction ability is extremely terrifying. Legends say that their homeland is in the void, and through the cracks in the void, they infiltrate the various continents. The places that are invaded by the Blue Dwarves will become the Blue Swamp. After a period of time, when the Blue Dwarves' reproduction peak is over, the rapidly expanding Blue Dwarves have no choice but to expand outwards, and they will rush out from the Blue Swamp, devouring the various continents, and that is the Blue Tide. Little Fool, who had just awoken from his deep sleep, his face congealed. Wars did not make him worried, he had experienced too many wars. No matter how cruel the war was to him, even if they could not win, protecting Tang Tian's safety was not a problem. Xiao Yu looked as if he had obtained a treasure and kowtowed 3 times. "Thank you, senior." "Grass sword?" Little fool muttered to himself. Using the sword's inherent sword concept, the idea is not bad, but a pity the technique is too rough without the refinement of flames. There are too many impurities, the power is too weak. Little fool refined another 2 and then started to weave the rope. His movements were very slow, so slow that Xiao Yu could see it clearly. Xiao Yu knew that the other party was giving him pointers and kept it in mind. He had always been waiting for orders and his heart was filled with regret. As an outstanding military general, he could see the pros and cons far more clearly than ordinary people. "Prepare to defend." Tang Tian jumped onto the tallest roof of the village and shouted to the bewildered villagers, "If you don't want to die, gather at my place." Yes, he is a famous general. Tang Tian was pleased. Bing was definitely a famous general. He clasped his hands together, the scarlet-red grass sword floating in his palms, releasing a pure sword concept. "Blue dwarves. Come out, Uncle Bing." Tang Tian looked at Little Fool with a weird face and lowered his voice. "Hey Little Fool, what are you doing? Pretending to be a senior? You don't do such a good thing." Ever since he knew that Little Fool was his other side, Tang Tian naturally thought that Little Fool was evil and dark. Crazy Tang was their true foundation. If Crazy Tang was safe and sound, then no matter what problem there would always be a chance. And if anything happened to Crazy Tang, then regardless of whether it was the Southern Cross Army or Ursa Major constellation, it would be a devastating blow. There were not many people in the village, only 146, but what made Tang Tian feel at ease was that all of them were saints. "What's going on?" Tang Tian patted his chest. "If there's anything you need help with, just say it." Tang Tian was not courteous at all, his tone was unquestionable. He was like the leader of the group, standing on the tallest roof of the village, giving orders. Xiao Yu's face was filled with worship and respect. He had weaved countless of grass swords, but none of them could compare to this grass sword. Tang Tian's dream talk made Xiao Yu feel that Big Brother Meng Nan definitely had a blood feud with the blue dwarves. But at the moment he could not care so much. Tang Tian said to Bing, "Uncle Bing, come and set up the defense. Quickly escape." "Mechanical giant." Xiao Yu blurted out, his face revealing a look of joy. It was not only him, the other villagers immediately looked at Tang Tian differently. Little Fool held onto the grass sword, suddenly pointing straight ahead. Yaya stood on top of Sky Tiger's head looking around. It was very awe-inspiring. "Thank you, Big Brother Meng Nan." Xiao Yu said gratefully. He looked at his brother on the bed, his tender face revealing a maturity that did not match his age. He shook his head. The wounds on brother's body were left by the blue dwarves. "I asked them before, they did not go to the blue swamp. How did they meet the blue dwarves? I suspect that the blue tide is about to start." Tang Tian curiously received the palm-length red grass sword. The grass sword was weaved from the roots of the red reed sword grass, and was warm to the touch. Tang Tian was moved. That faint red light, he could feel the sharp sword concept. When Little Fool completed the last knot, the sword concept suddenly congealed. The grass sword gradually left the ground, floating in the air. He took out a bright red grass sword and passed it to Tang Tian. "Big Brother Meng Nan, I'll give you a grass sword. This is a weapon that I refined." He then puffed out his chest and said proudly, "But I know many things." Chapter 561. Little Fool was completely speechless. Alright, he actually discussed such a profound question with this fool. He was the crazy one. "Get ready." After a moment of silence, a low voice came out from Sky Tiger. 10,000 years ago I left my comrades. They died. I am still alive. I have regretted it for countless of years. I told myself, I will never make the same mistake again. Inside Sky Tiger, Bing secretly shook his head. Following Crazy Tang, he had never fought a battle to his heart's content. Every time he did, it was extremely sullen. "Not good. This is too much." Bing glanced at the blue tide in the distance. The enemy had already entered their 20-li radius. Although the villagers were trying their best to restrain themselves, Bing could still see the fear on their faces. The villagers below were in an uproar. They were arranged on the roofs, mud walls, in a disorderly manner. Everyone's position was meticulously arranged. Unfortunately, these villagers were all novices. But luckily, although they were not outstanding warriors, most of them were qualified hunters. Tang Tian's eyes lit up. He shook the chains. The chains were as long as 10 m. The bronze balls were the size of millstones, extremely heavy. Every 3 inches was a short sword. Upon shaking, it was densely packed like a centipede. Such a lethal weapon, just looking at it would cause people to feel fear, their scalps going numb. Long-distance battle became the only choice. Thinking back. Pay attention to your position, do not leave your position. Very good, just like that. Pay attention to control the energy output, it must be uniform, it is very easy. Bing encouraged the novices loudly, then said, "Pay attention to my commands." Like the red reed's pith, the energy it contains, the purity is very high, it is rare to see in Heaven's Road. We have always said that energy gives birth to spirits. In places with dense energy, it is very easy to form martial spirits. But the sacred Saint Galaxy is not. The red reed's pith does not have any martial spirits, not even a fragment. And what is even more peculiar, is that it actually contains sword intent. I have never heard of any plant that would contain sword intent. Tang Tian was overjoyed. He had to say this weapon was indeed very suitable to deal with the blue dwarves. The blue dwarves were numerous, small in size, they had a higher defense against energy, but their bodies were weak. The moment the energy touched his body, Bing's face changed. Little fool introduced coldly. "Alright, I have to be more realistic, no, I have to be a spirit general too." Bing's face congealed. "Not as good as I thought. Although the people here are born saints, they do not have spirit domains." Tang Tian opened his mouth wide and was dumbstruck. These phenomena in the sacred region completely subverted his common sense. Tang Tian took it. It was a chain as thick as an arm, and at both ends of the chain were 2 strange-shaped weapons covered with spikes. Once the blue dwarves got close to them, these villagers would definitely collapse. "Do you really want to kill your way back to the void?" Little fool floated over. "Don't tell me you think that with just the few of us, we can fight against the entire blue dwarves population?" Each ball of light shot out a beam of light towards the sky tiger in the sky. Looking down from the sky, hundreds of light pillars of different colors converged on the sky tiger's body at the same time. It was a spectacular sight. Of course. Tang Tian's fighting intent soared. "I have martial spirit contracts with Crane and Ling Su, they are not dead. They must be waiting for us to rescue them. So it's best if you don't place any hope on their fighting abilities," Bing said helplessly. Tuli. Making people feel helpless. Little fool looked coldly at the 2 fools. He was too lazy to persuade them, since he was not the one in charge. Sounds interesting. Tang Tian's eyes lit up. He suddenly thought of a question. Then if we sell these things to Heaven's Road, won't we earn big? Even if these villagers did not have spirit domains, but the intense energy undulation was so strong that it made people fearful. In terms of energy intensity, the saints of Heaven's Road would definitely not be able to catch up. But Tang Tian was surprised again. Bing saw Tang Tian's expression and finally laughed. "Ha, I'm just trying to scare you. Although these fellows' attacks are too wasteful, but controlling their energy is practically their instinct, and all of them are like a human-shaped energy bag. It's practically prepared for an exceptional general like me." He bellowed and flew into the sky. Bing noticed Tang Tian's surprised expression and laughed bitterly. "It's weird, right, but the truth is like that. I checked their bodies and they are all the same. But their saints are much weaker than ours." What a good weapon. Bing could not help but exclaim. The blue dwarves were skinny and small, and the mechanical spirit weapons were huge, but it was like punching an ant. And this centipede hammer was like a huge comb. One could imagine once it was unleashed the scene would definitely be blood and flesh flying everywhere. Little fool's voice was childish, but Tang Tian's face was filled with shock. He muttered to himself, "Why don't they have martial spirits? Recruits, 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 it's always recruits. Could it be because I was an instructor for recruits in the past?" It was even worse this time. The recruits had at least completed their daily training, and the villagers did not even have the most basic knowledge. The Shang continent was remote, and Red Grass Village was even more so. The living environment was terrible, and the villagers mostly hunted and gathered for a living. The intense energy undulation caused Tang Tian to raise his eyebrows. Worried. Tang Tian laughed. His snow-white teeth were like a wild beast baring its fangs. A wave of bloodthirsty and fierce aura surged out. "I'm worried that I can't find them." The villagers who were placed in various positions, all lit up with bright light auras of different colors. In every corner of the village, light regiments lit up one after another. "If we are dealing with the blue dwarves." Little fool took out something and threw it to Tang Tian. "This weapon is more convenient. Little Fool looked at Sky Tiger. Tang Tian's face was innocent. Don't you think that earning money is a very powerful thing? Yes, our spirit domains are formed from the martial spirit, and can allow the movement of energy to break free from the restriction of the meridians, and thus be able to more directly imitate the laws of heaven and earth. But they do not have meridians. Their bodies are like a gigantic vessel, can directly store energy. They are born in such an environment, and their affinity with energy is much stronger than the martial artists of Heaven's Road. They do not even need meridians to absorb and refine energy. The way they use energy is the way of saints. How is it? Tang Tian asked Bing. 1, 3. Little Fool's tone was filled with anger. Where's your chia? Where's your dream? Where's your journey? Why do you only think of star coins? Where's your ambition? Where's your foresight? Where's your structure? Are you a merchant? Come on. You are now a tyrant. Thinking about such low-level things all day, such unambitious things, such unfashionable things, it's simply beneath your status. Bing ordered. In truth, not only did Little Fool discover the difference between the sacred Saint Galaxy and Heaven's Road, the attentive and experienced Bing also quickly discovered the difference. But Bing's research target was the villagers. To better arrange the defense line, he needed to have a more accurate understanding of the villagers' strength. Looking at the blue tide in the distance, Bing took a deep breath. His gaze suddenly became sharp. He raised his arm and shouted, "Remember what I said just now? Come, let us try it once." Bing explained, once they are born they can directly use energy. They completely do not need to worry about the amount of energy. They are naturally able to hold a lot of energy and replenish it is very convenient. This also means they do not need to worry about the efficiency of energy. Their attacks are extremely low on the efficiency of energy usage. Our spirit techniques are developed through layers upon layers of martial techniques. We are even more proficient in using less energy to achieve a satisfactory result. But they are completely wasting energy. I have never seen a martial artist with such a low efficiency of energy usage. His tone was resolute and decisive. When can I lead an invincible army and kill in all directions? Little Fool was stunned. Bing understood the recruits very well. In truth, in such an intense battle, the recruits did not have the space to survive. But now that he only had these cards, he did not have the leeway to choose. I am too lazy to name it, just call it Centipede Mace. The bronze mace is a star treasure from Mensa constellation, silver rank, mountain-shattering mace. It is an ordinary item. The only advantage is that it is heavy. All these short swords come from all constellations. The grades are all low and the attributes are all different. I feel that this weapon is very good against the blue dwarves. The centipede mace requires a lot of strength, but I believe you still have this bit of strength. As for strength, Tang Tian felt that he had an endless amount of strength in his body. Prepare for battle. No spirit domain? Tang Tian was shocked. Without a spirit domain, how could he become a saint? He could not wait to rush into the midst of the blue dwarves and kill in all directions. Tang Tian noticed that Little Fool's gaze was different, and asked curiously, "Little Fool, what's with your gaze?" Bing's light laughter came out from Sky Tiger. "I am a military general. There is no more suitable grave than the battlefield. There are people who live, there are people who die, there are people who win, there are people who lose. You are still you. Why you live, why you die in your heart. The situation is not that bad, right? He is still a saint." Tang Tian was shocked by Bing's conclusion. He was hoping to first defend this wave of attacks, and then return to kill his way into the blue tide, straight to the yellow springs. Tang Tian stood up and left, leaving behind a stern back view. He suddenly felt something and turned his face. In his vision, the blue tide had already crossed the warning line. The energy in the sacred Saint Galaxy is much denser than in Heaven's Road. But it is very strange, the materials here do not have spirits. In Heaven's Road, as long as there is a bit of energy, it is very easy to have a spirit. Although there are many low-level martial spirits, but martial spirits are the most common things. Treasures have martial spirits, martial artists have martial spirits, even those high-level materials, all contain fragments of martial spirits. But in all the things here I do not see any martial spirits. Little Fool looked at Tang Tian speechlessly. Little Fool's words were directed at Bing. The fool was a lunatic. He could do even the most ridiculous things, but Bing was an outstanding military general. At the crucial moment his mind was calm. Finally Little Fool said helplessly, "Aren't you worried about the blue dwarves?" "Good stuff." "Weird? What weird?" Tang Tian asked curiously. Even if you die? Little Fool raised his eyebrows. Chapter 562. The orange-red ball of fire rose up again as it exploded in mid-air. The effect of the attack was even more outstanding. The shock wave swept everything in its path as though it was destroying everything in its path. Tang Tian's eyes suddenly surfaced a layer of blood red. The fighting intent in his body was like a blazing flame burning fiercely. The difficulty of controlling the mechanical weapon's aura was even higher. 1,000 level of control aura even in his era was an extremely astonishing standard. Blood and flesh flew everywhere just like the blue dwarf's bodies exploding at the same time. Not a single blue dwarf was left standing. The scene was so bloody, it caused everyone who witnessed it to turn pale. Truly full of fighting spirit. Sky Tiger Soldier muttered to himself. He then raised his voice to encourage the villagers. You did well, just like that, let's do it again. Get ready. Both parties charged forward with all their might. When the energy converged, Bing, who was brimming with confidence, immediately sensed that something was amiss. The area enveloped by the centipede hammer became a meat grinder, blood and flesh flew everywhere. The densely packed short swords were like a fine comb, combing the entire area back and forth, combing it. Tang Tian's fighting instincts were so valiant that it made people's hair stand. And upon entering a bitter battle, Tang Tian was extremely focused, and his fighting instincts would become even more terrifying. Bang! Inside Sky Tiger, Bing wiped off his cold sweat, thinking to himself, it was so close just now. In the blink of an eye they met with a loud bang. Tang Tian suddenly shook the centipede hammer. The 10m long centipede hammer with a whoosh transformed into a whirlwind. Tang Tian's figure was completely enveloped in the whirlwind. Sky Tiger in the sky lit up again. This time it flew out, but it was 3 light bullets. Every light bullet was a size smaller. The 3 of them flew together, flying to the center of the Blue Tide's troops and exploded. Sky Tiger's martial spirit lit up with a dazzling light aura. This was the characteristic when it was fully activated. At this time, Bing also abandoned all distracting thoughts with full concentration. All of his consciousness, like countless of tentacles, extended into the surging sea of energy. The soundless shout was like thunder rumbling in his heart. Tang Tian was like an angry bear, roaring as he rushed towards the blue tide. Soon, balls of light lit up one after another and beams of light entered the Sky Tiger. In the blue ocean, a horrifying, scorched crater the size of an entire village had appeared. The so-called control aura was to control energy. If the energy exceeded a certain amount, it would be impossible to control. He had never imagined that the energy output of these villagers would be so terrifying. Tang Tian had completely abandoned his spirit skills. He was using his body to fight. Even the Blood Saint rarely used such a crude and simple method, but the effect was surprisingly good. The lines of fire revolved around the spindle-shaped cocoon of light. He suddenly had a flash of inspiration and a strange idea appeared in his mind. The ball of light spun faster and faster. Dazzling fiery lines were the sparks produced by the high-speed spinning energy. Everyone was stunned by the scene, even Bing himself was dumbfounded. Not to mention the villagers, all of them had their mouths wide open, and their faces were filled with shock. Bing's expression was like he had seen a ghost. Such a strong power caused Tang Tian to be stunned. He stared blankly and suddenly cheered loudly, "Uncle Bing, you did well." The tide of blue dwarves, countless of cold and murderous triangular faces, strange blue skin, swayed in his vision. The scenery on both sides flew past him quickly. Tang Tian's heart, however, was abnormally calm. The light bullets were getting closer and closer. The blue dwarfs below were trying their best to escape in all directions. But what they did not expect was that the light bullets would actually explode at a distance of 15m away from them. Bang! But the earth-shattering attack just now had given the villagers a huge amount of confidence. At least the fear on their faces had dissipated by half. To the recruits, victory was the best tonic. It could stabilize their emotions and allow them to adapt to the battlefield. After reducing the energy by half, Bing's control was immediately revealed. A light bullet that was half the height of a person once again flew in a beautiful arc towards the group of blue dwarves. The blue dwarves in the area did not expect Tang Tian to suddenly appear. When the illusions covered their heads, they did not even have the chance to escape. The weak bodies of the blue dwarves in the face of the berserk attack were like brittle biscuits, powerless to block. Hoo hoo hoo, The black gold absorbed by the blood furnace permeated into every part of Tang Tian's body, but the majority was not absorbed. Tang Tian was currently fully focused. Every bit of energy in his body was being mobilized by him. The black gold that was deposited in his body also became active. The astonishing amount of energy made him feel as though he was in the middle of a raging ocean. He was at a loss and did not know where to start. His heart skipped a beat. He was experienced and knew the danger of the situation. But for some reason Xiaoyu felt a sense of desperation. Even after many years he would not be able to forget this scene. The heavy copper hammer brought about a gust of air, which was enough to crush the blue dwarves' bodies. And for those short swords, as long as they touched them, a part of their body would be removed. Dong. Good, let's continue. Just like just now, one more time. Bing did not forget to add, reduce the power by half. Remember, reduce it by half. Like lightning, it landed in another dense group of blue dwarves and blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Bing's eyes suddenly lit up with a strange light aura. Sky Tiger and his mind were connected and suddenly lit up with countless light auras. The energy ball that enveloped Sky Tiger started to revolve slowly. The orange fireball rose up, like an expanding sun, in a moment swallowing countless blue dwarves. The terrifying wave of air was like a hurricane sweeping across. Those lucky blue dwarves that were not swallowed by the fireball were swept by the wave of air, as though they were struck by wild beasts. Countless of their skinny bodies were sent flying, fresh blood spurting out. Control aura was an essential technique that every military leader had to learn and master, and naturally there was a difference in quality. The current military leaders mostly went through systematic training in the academies, but Bing was not. He had been through the most bitter and bitter battles, and his standard of control aura was far from what a normal military leader could compare to. The imposing manner of the blue tide sweeping over caused despair. The villagers' faces all turned white. If not for the victory just now, which gave them some confidence in Bing, they would have long collapsed and turned to leave. That's right, throw them out. The blue dwarves seemed to have awoken from a dream. Their sharp voices came from behind. The blue tide immediately awoke. They started to spread their legs like a tide. They rushed towards the village. The blue dwarves' attacks were strong, their movements were nimble, their defense against energy was also very strong, but their bodies were thin and weak. The impact wave that was not strong could cause fatal damage to them. Once they found their weakness, they could effectively kill the opponent. That's right, Bing said proudly. This is called the bearing of a famous general. I will definitely come and save you. All the villagers stretched their necks, their gazes firmly following the dazzling and gorgeous light arc. No one can stop me. The ground shook as though it was the end of the world. Hey Mengnan, I'll leave the inside line to you. The low and deep explosive sound like a heavy hammer caused everyone's heart to jump. The high-speed light cocoon was like a cannonball, dragging a long light tail, drawing an elegant arc flying towards the densely packed group of blue dwarves. Men and horses fell, flesh and blood splattered. It was as if it was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Bing, who was in the distance, had always been paying attention to Tang Tian. When he saw Tang Tian's weird fighting method, he could not help but blurt out, "Frog jumping tactics." Tang Tian suddenly bounced up. He was like a frog suddenly jumping 15 m away. Looking at the densely packed blue dwarves, he grinned, the centipede hammer in his hand, dancing into a ball of shadows. Bing said to Tang Tian with a hint of ridicule. Little fool's face turned black. This name made him, the other side of him, feel ashamed. Tang Tian's cheers also pulled everyone's attention back. The way the villagers looked at Bing immediately became different. Tang Tian did not need to worry about the problem of accidentally injuring others, since he was surrounded by enemies. The extremely heavy centipede hammer in his hands was extremely light. The blood furnace continuously strengthened his body. His body was even stronger than before. The surrounding blue dwarves were also stunned. Without waiting for them to react, Tang Tian bounced up again. These blue dwarves were much weaker than the ones they met in the sea of blue light, and the black short spears in their hands compared to the ice blue tree branches were like toothpicks. The power was much weaker. Xiaoyu, who climbed up the mud wall with great effort, coincidentally saw the scene, and he was struck by lightning. The boundless blue tide was like a flood engulfing everything. Big Brother Mengnan, who was roaring and charging, was alone, so lonely, so overconfident. Definitely. Bang. Again. Tang Tian quickly realized rushing through the crowd was actually not efficient. especially when he could not unleash the power of the short swords. The heavy copper hammers swept through the air at high speed, producing a low whistling sound, while the swords tied to the chains swept through the air, producing a high and sharp whistling sound. The two completely different sounds mixed together, creating an extremely frightening scene. Brat, if you realize that the control aura failed, throw it out. The huge mushroom cloud was so dazzling the surging blue tide as though it was immobilized actually had a short moment of stillness. Crane, Ling Su, Big Brother Jing, how all of you must persevere. With the charred black hole as the center, it radiated out in all directions within a few miles radius. Countless of blue corpses were lying on the ground like harvesting wheat. These blue dwarves were all killed by the shockwave, their internal organs ruptured. There were too many blue dwarves, although Bing had already lost control of his aim, but he still fell into the strange blue sea. Xian's words struck his mind like lightning. As expected of a human-shaped bag of energy. Bing's shout came out from behind again. Tang Tian did not even turn his head, dragging the centipede hammer and rushed towards the blue tide. The group of blue dwarves was in an uproar. The tragic scene of the explosion was seen by all of them. With just one strike, Bing realized the shockwave's damage to the blue dwarves was much greater than the explosion itself. Not only did he not feel tired, but he felt his body was warm, as though the energy in his body was slowly awakening. If he were to see his own skin, he would definitely be shocked. His skin was as black as ink with a metallic luster. Bing was extremely confident in his control aura. 146 villagers? So what if it was just a few people's control aura? Tang Tian held on to the centipede hammer, jumped down the mud wall without turning his head. He said, "Leave it to me." Chapter 563. But the enemy's reaction was much faster than he expected, and was not as slow as the blue dwarves previously. Bang bang bang. Where? Little Fool suppressed his restless heart. He rushed forward without hesitation. If he could capture the enemy leader, it would be a huge merit and Master would definitely reward him. Just at that moment, 7 to 8 spears shot towards Little Fool. Although Little Fool could not do what Jing Hao did to be able to unleash sword laws, but he was after all trained in sword techniques, and his sword techniques were even more outstanding than Crane's. Since he knew that the blue dwarves had good defense against energy but terrible defense against power, he naturally had his ways. To Little Fool, the scene in front of him was not bloody, but it still gave him a huge shock. Yaya's display of power was out of his expectations. The ocean prison sword in his hand easily dealt with a few blue dwarves that pounced forward, and Little Fool continued to chase. Without the threat of the Empyrean ice tree branch, the power of the blue dwarves was nothing in Little Fool's eyes. A terrifying battle instinct. So sinister. But before Little Fool could react, Yaya screeched and pounced towards the group of blue dwarves. Little Fool's eyes blurred and he lost sight of Yaya. Little Fool's eyes twitched so fast. And with their tacit understanding, the interval between each attack was greatly reduced, and that was the result of the crazy bombardment. But what happened next caused the ecstasy on his face to freeze. When Little Fool appeared again, his eyes suddenly constricted. The surrounding blue dwarves were obviously much stronger than the cannon fodder, and the pressure on him increased. Yaya nodded his head resolutely, and even used his hand to gesture at his neck as though saying, "If I miss this time, I will commit suicide to apologize." The group of blue dwarves' abnormal behavior made Little Fool immediately realize he had caught a big fish. Little Fool clenched his teeth and brought Yaya along. The blue dwarves rarely had an old appearance and they were all carved from the same mold. The old-looking blue dwarf in front of him was obviously a big figure. And no one noticed that Little Fool was leading Yaya in the army, searching for the enemy's leader. He brought a group of villagers and bombarded the terrifying blue tide. Piu. Thus the blue dwarf army was cut in half by Bing. Bing could see it clearly. His firepower to the entire blue tide was undoubtedly a drop in the bucket, but if used well it could cut off the connection between the front and back. In the blink of an eye, the frontline army that did not receive any reinforcements immediately became riddled with holes, becoming unrecognizable. Suddenly, Yaya gestured in front of her excitedly, her mouth babbling non-stop. Little Fool, however, had a doubtful look on his face. "Are you sure? You're not lying to me this time, right?" The blue dwarf who was thrusting his spear revealed a look of ecstasy. Yaya's elusive figure that was as fast as lightning had long made him fearful. As he escorted the leader back, he plotted in his heart. He was waiting for the best opportunity. He knew he only had one chance to attack. If he missed, there would definitely not be a second chance. Little Fool's heart was in a mess. He felt that he must have gone crazy to follow Yaya's nonsense. In contrast, the idiot was actually playing a very skillful frog-jumping tactic. Little Fool had an illusion that his intelligence was instantly destroyed. In truth, the speed of the blue dwarves was not slow in Little Fool's eyes, but compared to Yaya they were not on the same level. Yaya only left a faint afterimage and disappeared. The sharp screams filled his eardrums. After that, Yaya babbled and gestured, saying that he could find the leader of the blue dwarves, and he actually believed it. But Yaya was faster than him. Yaya stepped on the shoulders of the blue dwarves and flew. Its body was petite and its speed was as fast as lightning. It was extremely difficult for the black spears to hit it. Suddenly a squeak was heard. Before the blue liquid could splatter, Yaya had already jumped onto another blue dwarf's shoulder and did the same thing. Yaya's small eyes opened wide. The opponent's spear had been prepared for a long time, and was as fast as lightning. Yaya could not react in time, and could only watch as his body crashed into the opponent's spear tip. Yaya was scared out of his wits. His small face was filled with fear. Yaya was actually so powerful. Die. At the front of the army there was Tang Tian the cruel frog, continuously jumping here and there. Every time he jumped he would leave behind a circular empty space. Little Fool's blink appeared and disappeared unpredictably. Every time he appeared it would cause a commotion, but before the surrounding blue dwarves could react, they had already disappeared. He was filled with confidence. Countless of battles in the past had proven, as long as the enemy was pierced by his wooden spear, they would never survive. How did I become like this? The moment he brushed past the black spears, the faint undulation became clearer, causing Little Fool's hair to stand. He was almost certain that the black spears were very dangerous. Without thinking, his body flickered like a ghost and passed through the spears without blocking. It cheered in its heart and with force, it stepped on the blue dwarf's shoulder and like lightning, pounced towards the opponent. The pitch-black spears were also made from tree branches. Little Fool did not know why, but the pitch-black spear seemed to have a faint undulation, causing Little Fool's heart to palpitate. I actually believed in Yaya. Yaya's small face was extremely excited. The old blue dwarf was getting closer and closer to him. The nervousness and fear on the villagers' faces had dissipated, and after working together for so many times, everyone quickly understood the knack of it. These villagers had interacted with energy since young, and were naturally adept at using energy, and with their special physique, it also gave them an extremely strong advantage in terms of using energy. The blue dwarves in Little Fool's field of vision were all being shot in the head at an astonishing speed. After continuous attacks, Bing had already found the best way to deal with the blue dwarves. Every wave of attack was split into 8 light bullets. Every light bullet's power was much smaller, but the 8 light bullets could cover a rectangular area of 500 m long and 100 m wide. No matter how powerful the Fool was and how the blue dwarves were cannon fodder, just relying on the Fool's power, he would definitely not be able to kill all the blue dwarves. This was the main reason why Little Fool agreed to Yaya's suggestion. To catch the bandits, first catch the leader, was the best way to deal with the human wave tactic. Yaya suddenly appeared on one of the blue dwarf's shoulders. His small fist smashed onto the blue dwarf's head. Bang! The head exploded like a watermelon, countless blue juices splattering everywhere. Alright, I have already used this method a few times since I am already on the pirate ship. Little Fool thought helplessly. Following the direction that Yaya pointed, his figure instantly disappeared. Little Fool realized the blue dwarves that were pouncing towards him crazily suddenly had their heads exploded like watermelons. Little Fool could faintly see a shadow flashing past like smoke. Countless delicacies floated past Yaya's eyes, his saliva flowing to the corner of his mouth. The good thing was that the energy here was extremely dense. His blink did not have to worry about not having enough energy. Everyone's energy output was extremely balanced and extremely accurate. To a military leader who was proficient in controlling auras, such a soldier could increase their strength by a few levels. He had already experienced such a situation a few times, and after continuously missing, he naturally could not help but have a question mark. After overcoming their fear, their performance immediately made Bing extremely happy. Just how stupid was I to let myself fall to such a state? Finally, it was his turn. He swept past a few blue dwarfs' bodies. the bewitching blue blood blossomed, different from Yaya who only liked to explode heads. Every time his sword stabbed, it would be fatal but not the same. Little Fool's eyeballs almost dropped to the ground. Little Fool who was not far away, his face changed, his hands and feet turned ice cold. No. Ocean Prison Sword's wrist that was holding the sword lightly shook. A formless ripple suddenly rippled out. There was no energy undulation, just the sword body breaking through the air, forming an air blade. All right, when Little Fool was prepared to attack, Yaya appeared out of nowhere. His pitiful gaze made Little Fool realize that he was actually unable to reject him. All right, who asked him to save my life before? A small black dot, it was a jet black spear tip, suddenly appeared in his vision. The opponent was like a venomous snake hiding in the dark, waiting for the opportunity to deal a fatal blow, and this time the timing was grasped perfectly. The frog jump tactic was not a commonly used tactic. In truth, it was very harsh to use, and needed to fulfill many specific conditions. Even when he was in the Southern Cross Army, Bing did not use it much. Because it was an unconventional tactic, Bing did not teach it to Tang Tian. Very quickly, Little Fool locked onto the oldest-looking blue dwarf in the group. Yaya said such a large group would definitely have a leader. In a moment, Little Fool got into a fighting stance. Yaya nimbly jumped here and there. If we were to say that Tang Tian was like a cruel frog, then Yaya was like a nimble Iron Fist squirrel. Its size was smaller than the blue dwarf's, allowing it to be even more relaxed. Bing was like that now. To the endless blue tide, every explosion was nothing, but Bing always controlled the area of the explosions to be in the middle of the blue tide. Mine. So when Bing saw Tang Tian using the frog jump tactic without a teacher and using it here, and the results were extremely outstanding, he naturally looked like he had seen a ghost. The surrounding blue dwarves held onto their wooden spears, pouncing towards Little Fool frantically. Their movements were agile and fast. All the contempt he had just now was immediately swept away. The Sacred Saint Galaxy had too many dangers and fatal unknowns. The Ocean Prison Sword in his hands had actually not been used yet. That's right, it was indiscriminate bombing. Following the sound, Little Fool then noticed a group of blue dwarves were retreating in panic. This immediately attracted Little Fool's attention. The blue dwarves were not considered strong, but they were not afraid of death. Advancing wave after wave, Little Fool did not see any signs of them escaping. Bing regained his senses and shouted loudly, "One more time." Little Fool's eyes twitched so cruel. He suddenly remembered Yaya had once learned the swallowing light steel fist, although its fist was small but it was black and hard. Chapter 564. In the next moment, a rumbling explosion came out from afar. Maintain the rhythm just now. He almost turned and ran. The surging blue tide was something that even precious Bright City was unable to defend against. So, suddenly Shi Yong's face changed. Listen, what's that sound? Shi Yong swallowed his saliva with difficulty. He did not dare raise his head to look at the mechanical giant in the sky, and carefully went around Red Grass Village. To prevent any misunderstandings, he stayed far away from Red Grass Village. He wanted to see how other people would deal with the blue tide. Who knows, it might be useful when defending Precious Bright City. Protecting the homeland was the Precious Bright Village Regiment's most fundamental mission. If they did not resist and left, how could they face their fellow villagers in the future? Ding. Little Fool's face that was filled with killing intent, his expression became strange. He had seen the power of the thrust. He thought that Yaya would be pierced, but he did not expect that it did not even pierce through his skin, and so powerful. Little Fool did not look as relaxed as he looked. When Ocean Prison Sword and the black spear clashed, a thread of sinister black chi had seeped into his Ocean Prison Sword from the tip of the spear, causing the void dark flames to be unable to refine it. Luckily, on top of Ocean Prison Sword, other than the void dark flames, there was also the spirit devouring flame. He watched carefully. Shi Yong and his group flew with all their might, all of their faces filled with anxiety. No one expected that the blue tide would erupt so ferociously. In the short span of a few days, a few villages had already been submerged by the blue tide. After 10 seconds he regained his senses, his heart overwhelmed with shock. The spear tip had pierced Yaya's stomach. Even though it was a city, if it was on another planet, it would just be a small town. So fast. He could not imagine what kind of big figure would have the qualifications to own such a beautiful mechanical giant as a mount. Shi Yong only had that word in his mind, but following that an intense shame surged in his mind. Others were still fighting against the blue tide. and his first thought was to escape. It was too embarrassing. Dong. The team members around him had long since turned pale and their legs were weak. Seeing that Shi Yong did not care about them, he gathered his courage and headed towards Red Grass Village. None of the blue dwarves were able to get close to him. All of the black spears that were shot at him were concentrated like rain, but in front of the whirlwind, they were like fragile tree branches that crumbled. Yes. Shi Yong responded and said in a deep voice, "It's not only our red grass planet, the Xia continent also had a blue tide erupt, and it's a few planets erupting at the same time. In the Shang continent only our red grass planet has it, the other two planets don't." However, he didn't choose to directly enter Red Grass Village. Instead he circled around it. Wait a minute. Red Grass Planet was simply too barren. Aside from some low-grade materials there was nothing else. No faction would be interested in this place, let alone occupy it. Even the bandits looked down on this place, so it was easy to imagine. Everyone's faces changed slightly. Shi Yong's expression also changed slightly and he bellowed, "Go take a look. Red Grass Village is up ahead." Could it be? Shi Yong quivered. The shock the other party gave him was too strong, to the point that he even forgot the most important thing. Blue tide. The biggest possibility of fighting now was the blue tide. Could it be that Red Grass Village encountered a blue tide? What a savage fellow. Well done. Again. In the sky above Red Grass Village, a mechanical giant was floating. Countless of light pillars shot out from every corner of the village and converged on the mechanical giant's body. The dense energy wrapped around it, forming a dazzling halo around it. Even though they were far away, they could still feel the terrifying might. It was tyrannical beyond compare, like a god of war. A muffled sound came out. The plump Yaya was like an extremely elastic ball that was fiercely stabbed by a wooden stick. A powerful force exploded out. Before the fear on Yaya's face could subside, it felt its vision blur. Blue tide. Yaya turned into a small black dot that flew higher and higher. The Shang continent was originally a small continent, and the Red Grass Planet was an extremely small planet. The entire planet's population was less than 60,000 people, and they were all scattered around. The Red Grass Planet only had a pitiful city, Precious Bright City. Shi Yong's Precious Bright Village Regiment was considered the only armed force of the Red Grass Planet. They maintained law and order on a daily basis, and occasionally accepted some missions to earn some money. The Precious Bright Village Regiment was the lowest grade village regiment. Their strength was extremely low, but the entire regiment was made up of locals and could be considered as fellow villagers. Regarding protecting their homeland, they never frowned. This time the blue tide had erupted without any warning and was extremely ferocious. Shi Yong felt that his common sense was completely overturned. These country bumpkins, were they actually able to form formations? This must be an illusion. How is that possible? There's a war here. But when his gaze landed on the figure in the middle of the blue tide, he could not help but take in a breath of cold air. That boundless blue ocean was enough to make one despair. In the face of such a vast amount, an individual's strength was so insignificant, so minuscule. The faint colorful spirit-devouring flame seemed to have smelled food and pounced forward. Little Fool's eyes flashed with a fierce look. In the next moment he appeared behind the blue dwarf that stabbed the spear. The blue dwarf's strength was not ordinary. Sensing danger, he swung his black spear backwards, his body following the spear, fiercely thrusting towards Little Fool. It sounds like an explosion. Everywhere it passed, people and horses fell, not a single person survived. Can't be. The smile on his face disappeared. Little Fool's gaze, once again locked onto the old blue dwarf. Yaya had used its beautiful soul-locking parabola to prove that even if it found its target, it would not be easy to succeed. Shi Yong took a deep breath, forced himself to calm down and bellowed, "Let's go take a look." Shi Yong closed his eyes, took a few deep breaths. After calming himself down, he once again opened his eyes and sized up the entire battlefield. "No problem. At most we can organize everyone to retreat to Green Valley or Huili." Shi Yong sighed. "I'm afraid the Xia continent is doomed this time. They have 3 planets erupting with the blue tide. I'm afraid it will be more dangerous than disastrous." This blue dwarf stared dumbfoundedly at the disappearing little black dot in the sky. His spear, he had used all his strength and actually did not pierce through this little thing's stomach. When he was nearing Red Grass Village, he felt that the master in the mechanical giant in the sky seemed to glance at him. Xianxia's body froze and his mind went blank. The incomparably heavy meteor hammer in the hands of this person was as light as a toy, and the short swords were like the blades of a meat grinder. This person's fighting style was even stranger, like a frog jumping and jumping. Every time he landed there would be screams and wails and flesh and blood splattered. Wait a minute. This is... Everyone was speechless. Just one look was filled with such a terrifying pressure. The mechanical giant waved its hand, and a row of light bullets, dragging a long tail of light, flew far away. Little Fool raised his head to look at the little black dot flying far away, and felt an indescribable sense of joy. This fellow came to this world to be funny, right? The long-prepared stab was full of power. The sharp spear tip instantly pierced into Yaya's plump belly, but the feeling of the spear tip was so unfamiliar. The voice of the master came from far away, and made Xianxia wake up from his dream. At this time he noticed that the figures that were enveloped by the light balls were the villagers of Red Grass Village. Little Fool's heart trembled. The sacred Saint Galaxy was indeed strange. But now was not the time to think about this. He had to capture that fellow first. It can't be, we are so unlucky. The members all had bitter looks on their faces. Xianxia was a small captain of the Precious Bright Village Regiment. He had roamed the world for 2 years, although he was not strong enough and had to return, but in the Precious Bright Village Regiment he was a true expert. The sword tip and spear tip clashed, sparks flew, but Little Fool did not move an inch. He sneered. The blue dwarf's heart suddenly turned cold. He knew that something was wrong. A sharp pain came from his chest. He was stunned. He lowered his head to look, only to see a black sword tip piercing out from his chest. With the strength of the Precious Bright Village Regiment, they were not even enough to fill the gaps between the blue dwarf's teeth, much less block the blue tide. So strong. This. Captain, sure, is it really that bad this time? One of the members could not help but ask, his face filled with fear. Little Fool's eyes turned cold. His figure suddenly disappeared. Blink. The relationship between the Summer Continent and the Shang Continent was terrible. There were many disputes between them. The Summer Continent was much stronger than the Shang Continent, and for the past few years Xianxia and the rest had suffered under the hands of the Summer Continent. But at this time, no one had the slightest bit of schadenfreude when they heard the news. Xianxia was dumbstruck. The strength displayed by the mechanical giant was so strong that he had to bow down in worship. He had ventured out before and had seen the higher-ranked commanders. However, no one's strength could be compared to this god of war. From the information he had obtained, although the sacred Saint Galaxy was filled with energy, but it did not have any spirits. To be able to make the spirit-devouring flame so interested, what exactly was that black chi? He had seen all the luxurious mechanical giants before, but in front of the azure-blue mechanical giant that was like a work of art, they were like metal cans that were extremely ugly. The sword tip suddenly disappeared and he felt the strength in his entire body being sucked out. He fell to the ground and lost consciousness. But to think that you can stop me with just that bit of strength, you must be dreaming. The other members were startled and immediately listened attentively. Every time the blue tide erupted, blood would flow like a river. The big continents were still fine as they were organized properly, and were usually able to resist the blue tide. But to the small continents, it was usually a disaster. Then the scene in front of him caused his hands and feet to turn cold, and the blood in his face instantly disappeared. Following the release of the light bullets, the light halo around the mechanical giant became much dimmer, and Xianxia could see it even more clearly, causing his face to change. This. Is this still a stomach? That little thing, what kind of monster is it? An important person. His figure disappeared again. The front of the blue dwarf's army was turned into a mess by this person and was riddled with holes. The incessant explosions were the best footnotes. The man who was like a wild beast had entered a place where no one could stop him. We are just doing our best and leaving it up to the heavens. Let's send a message to everyone. If we can escape, that's one more. Xianxia sighed. Xianxia was dumbstruck. Very quickly they saw Red Grass Village and the scene in front of them caused them to be stunned. Chapter 565. What's so strange about bringing my home into Ursa Major constellation? It wasn't strange for the Bear King to do even stranger things. Temple. Ah, a lioness turning into a sheep? How could he have such a thought? His brain must have been caught in the door. No, it must have been too hard in the previous few battles. Then why did they occupy Wuan's star? The bald elder questioned. What is there worth occupying? Declaring ownership? They are even willing to send an army. There must be something fishy going on. However, when they heard that Han Bingning had really made a discovery, they were still very excited. Unfortunately, they met a little fool who could teleport. Do you want to declare war on Ursa Major constellation at this time? Do you have money? Xiao Ran threw him a look of disdain. The four of them would often discuss together, and in the end one day Sima Xianxia, who had the most eccentric ideas, suddenly raised an extremely brazen guess. The zero-energy body itself should have a unique ability. Thinking of the warmth from before, a smile suddenly blossomed on her cold, sweaty face. At this time casualties are meaningless. The four of them had also participated in the energy transformation, and were already on the path of zero-energy body. The current zero-energy body was mostly using Tang Tian's energy stimulation method. It was to use energy to stimulate the zero-energy body, and strengthen the repulsive effect of the zero-energy body. Ursa Major constellation's recent movements are very strange. They are consolidating 3 spirit city. We have to pay attention to their movements. A bald elder said. Xiao Ran looked at Axin. The great elder acted as if he didn't see the commotion at all as he continued to speak. Half an hour later she struggled to get up, took a shower, changed her clothes and went to the dining room. In order to help everyone cultivate more peacefully, there was a special restaurant here. The food in the restaurant had been meticulously cooked and could effectively nourish one's body. Tang Tian, who was killing excitedly, suddenly realized that the blue dwarves around him were not resisting and stopped. He raised his head and saw little fool in the sky who was holding on to the leader of the other party. He was stunned for a moment and immediately revealed a look of joy. Only with this victory can we wait for reinforcements from the army. Before the army arrives we can only fight alone. Bing Bing is a little slow this time. Sima Xianxia giggled. More and more people noticed little fool and the old man in the sky. They wailed incessantly and lay on the ground. Axin was stunned for a moment. Shouldn't there be a flying kick at this time? Or would that door-sized sword send him flying? Did this girl change? Yaya crawled out from a deep hole in the ground, his face covered in dirt, his chubby little face filled with anger. He rubbed his stomach. When he saw little fool in the sky, he immediately forgot his pain and waved his little hands with all his might. Axin heaved a sigh of relief as he was sent flying by the door-sized greatsword. This was normal. His figure disappeared. Following that he appeared behind the aged blue dwarf like a ghost. There was only an extremely narrow space, just enough to accommodate little fool. Han Bingning wiped her sweat and rested for about 10 minutes before starting a new round of cultivation. The continuous training had pushed her physical strength to the limit, but she gritted her teeth and persevered, her sword moves not messed up at all. In truth, everyone was more optimistic about Han Bingning. The four of them all had different temperaments. Amauri was the most courageous, Sima Xianxia was the most crafty, Liangqiu was the most steady and Han Bingning was the most tranquil. And people with a tranquil heart were the easiest to notice. It was chaos below. The blue dwarves around the old man were all shocked. When one of the blue dwarves saw little fool and his leader in the sky, he wailed and laid down on the ground. Everyone, we are destined to be the public enemies of Heaven's Road. Between Heaven's Road and Sacred Saint Galaxy, there can only be one victor. Ever since the last time, Axin seemed to have changed, although he was still as mischievous as before. But Xiao Ran could sense that Axin was different. That's right, eyes. Axin's eyes were no longer covered by layers of mist, but were as bright as the stars, like a regiment of flames, as though something was burning. The 3 of them spoke in unison. That's right, when we reach the Sacred Saint Galaxy, we will dress our Xiao Ran up as a fairy. Axin smiled mischievously without a serious expression. We only need to win. And although the zero-energy body had the repulsive effect and strengthened the physical body, but compared to other blood meridians, the strengthening was not considered a special ability. Weird. What? Another clan elder retorted. 3 Spirit City was originally their base, although Fornax constellation is in their hands, but 3 Spirit City is in the spirit region, so it is more convenient to travel with Libra constellation and they are cooperating. Everyone was dumbstruck. Sima Xianxia's thoughts were normal. Almost all blood meridians had special abilities. Sima Xianxian's thoughts were different. He felt that the zero energy body was no different from other blood meridians. It definitely had some special ability, just that it had not been unearthed yet. Just like the awakening of blood meridians, there was a high possibility that the zero energy body required a unique awakening method. Maori's entire face was buried in his plate of food. His plate was much bigger than others and he wolfed it down. Liang Qiu smiled at Han Bingning. Finally, they stopped in front of a dark red river. The river was surging, the blood waves rolling. The wide river surface gave people the feeling of being in a sea of blood. In the next moment, Little Fool carried the old blue dwarf and appeared in the sky. The great clan elder said with satisfaction, "Now let us discuss about Leo constellation. I think we cannot let the battle drag on like this. I suggest to release the order for the entire palace to mobilize." "You succeeded?" Her breathing became more and more hurried, and when she was almost unable to hold on, suddenly a warm intent surged out from her body. The warm intent was extremely minute, but it caused Han Bingning's spirit to be roused. "It is a very strange power, you guys see." Sima Xianxian's idea attracted everyone's interest, as Tang Tian's idea was the main direction of research for the Saint unit. The battlefield was in chaos. The old blue dwarf, under the protection of many guards, was retreating in a panic. The black spear blue dwarf was killed, causing them to sense danger. The spoils of war were their best nourishment. This time even the great clan elder who was in charge of the meeting could not take it anymore and cut him off. Maybe he remembers old times, maybe he wants to take care of his mother's grave. Maybe he wants to take care of his previous principal. Maybe the army will make Tang Tian feel more glorious. Alright, there are many possibilities, but what's so strange about it? It's just returning home in glory. When the guards crossed each other, Little Fool's pupils suddenly constricted. An opening. The bald old man sat down angrily and did not say a word. That's right, even if Tang Tian was weird and Wuan Star, so what? A group slowly moved forward. The huge battlefield, after a series of wails, fell into a dead silence. The progress was slow, but no one was discouraged. They knew that it was just a bold idea. Sima Xianxian was startled. Liang Qiu's movements stopped, and he immediately put down his chopsticks. A Maori raised his head from the rice bowl, ignoring the fact that his entire face was covered in food. The other clan elders all nodded their heads. Other than the young lady at the front who was dressed in an eye-catching dark green military uniform, the rest were dressed in gray. The continuous battles had caused everyone to be tired, and the group moved forward silently. Ursa Major constellation. The bald old man's face was flushed red. He still wanted to argue. Han Bingning used his chopsticks as a sword, his expression solemn. A gray flame quietly extended along his chopsticks. The great clan elder made a hand gesture to stop him. "Maybe you are right. But we are powerless against 2 ecliptic palace constellations or even 3. To provoke that bear at this time is not rational at all. I believe that you agree with me." The great clan elder's gaze swept across the entire field. His gaze was sharp and no one dared to look him in the eye. The village in the distance also released earth-shattering cheers. "Although my talent is ordinary, but I am not willing to see your back getting further and further away. Anyways, there are so many saints researching on that path. If everyone were to fiddle with this unorthodox path, there would be no loss." In the past few days, the 4 of them had been pondering in this direction, and every mealtime was the fixed time for everyone to discuss. If one were to say that the ancient battlefield was a gray world, then with the Blood River as the boundary, the other side was actually a black world. The black land stretched as far as the eye could see, and it looked eerie and terrifying. But luckily, although they were only left with a quarter, the strength of the spirit generals had a huge improvement. The entire palace was mobilized. Along the way there were battles every single day, and the spirit general army that they had gathered was constantly shrinking. The current scale was only a quarter of what it used to be, so one could imagine how bitter the journey was. "After crossing this river and passing through the burnt puppet desolate lands, we will reach it." Xiao Ran placed her hand on her forehead and gazed into the distance. Bang! She had no strength to climb up and allowed herself to lie on the ground, feeling the perspiration flowing down her face, feeling her gasping for breath. She stared at the ceiling in a daze. "This war has dragged on for too long. We should not hold back. Don't forget the reason why our temple exists. The time is getting closer. The enmity between us and the ecliptic palace constellations cannot be resolved. The reason why they have not made a move is because 20 years ago we defeated them and they still have fear towards us and are still fantasizing about us. If we allow the war to continue on like this, then the other constellations will have less and less restraining fear. At that time they will be like berserk jackals and eat us until not even our bones are left, and the plan to conquer Heaven's Road will be completely ruined. Han Bingning carried her plate, walked to the table and sat down without saying a word. She suddenly said, "I've grasped something." Xia looked at the other side of the river. The light aura blossoming from her beautiful eyes was like the blazing sun, causing people to be unable to look straight at her. The war in the burnt puppet desolate lands would only be more cruel, but she was not afraid at all. Her expression became solemn. Cross the river. Before all the blue dwarfs had regained their senses, Little Fool had already placed his sword on the old blue dwarf's neck. His other hand grabbing onto it, he disappeared at the same time. Blink. The entire place was in an uproar. Chairs fell to the ground. A few of the clan elders stood up, and even more of the clan elders were overwhelmed with shock. In the history of Temple, the number of times it had appeared could be counted with one's fingers. The last time it had appeared was 20 years ago. Shi Yong, who was spectating the battle, could not believe his own eyes. Was that victory? The uproar disappeared and the entire place became silent. With a plop she fell down. Xian and Xiaoman retracted the playful look on their faces. Their hearts trembled and they replied in unison, "Yes." The forever unchanging scenery was desolate and desolate, but the ancient sounds of killing did not seem to have left, and only continued to wail in the wind. Amauri, Liang Qiu and Sima Xiangshan were already there waiting for her. The four of them came from the same place and had great teamwork and trust in each other. No one noticed the gap.